Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto becomes a Spider-Man and marry Gwen part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the SCARFACE101 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Okay, pretty sure my story has been told a million times, but for the sake of being thorough and adding context, let's make it 1,000,001 times. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, pretty sure you know my story by now. Orphan, social outcast, prankster, struggled in school, host to the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the whole 9 yards. My teammate Sasuke Uchiha went rogue to seek out Orochimaru for more power to get revenge on his brother, and I failed to stop Sasuke and bring him back to Konoha. I am currently 15 years of age, and it has been a year since I went on a training trip with Jiraiya the Toad Sannin to get stronger and settle the score with Sasuke and Orochimaru. This is my story on how I became Spider-Man. As you might have already guessed, it started with a radioactive spider. Somewhere in the Shinobi Nations. Naruto sighed to himself as he stared up at the sky while lying on the ground, a deep scowl on his face. A year had gone by faster than he had thought, and thus far, he felt that it had been wasted. A whole year to train, and the only results he got was some mediocre taijutsu and learning to create a larger Rasengan. Definitely not promising progress. The last time he locked horns with Sasuke, he had hesitated in taking the win and almost paid the price for it with his life and failed the mission. If he wasn't prepared to win against the Uchiha in their next fight, he could actually get killed. So far, Jiraiya hadn't taught him anything worthwhile and often went off to screw around at brothels or peeped on women at bathhouses like the creep that he was. He frowned deeper as he held his hand up as it trembled. It had been doing that every so often since his near-death experience. It seemed to be a minor issue, but he had been having it ever since that fateful day. A part of him wondered if it may be the result of some lingering PTSD from that incident. He hoped it was nothing to be worried about. He didn't really notice it until he had already left the village, making him wish that he could have consulted Tsunade or Shizune about it, as they were perhaps the only ones that he felt that he could trust and would actually listen to him. He had managed on his own for the time being, but each day was getting just a little as his frustration seemed to pile up. He had considered talking to the Toad Sannin about it, but then Jiraiya wasn't exactly a reliable person in his opinion. If only there was someone out there that I could talk to, he thought. I wish I had a teacher that I can rely on. Or just someone to listen to. He thought to himself as he felt more alone than ever now. He was far from home, his friends were no doubt doing their own training and bettering themselves. He felt like he was stuck. He looked back on his years of loneliness, the teasing he had received at school, the sparring matches where he had been set up as Sasuke's opponent, or rather punching bag. He recalled that all of his teachers had failed him in some capacity or other or held him back. Iruka's lack of initiative, Kakashi favoring Sasuke, and Jiraiya giving him vague instructions and then leaving to do Kami knows what. For a long time now, Naruto had bottled up his emotions and tried to put on a smile, thinking things would get better if he just kept going. In some ways, they did, but mostly things had gotten worse. He grabbed his wrist and sighed as he tried to subdue the trembling. He wished that there was a better way, a better path for him to take. His musing was interrupted as he heard what sounded like an explosion, making him leap to his feet and take on a defensive posture, but then slowly relaxed as he saw that nothing was there. No signs of smoke, fire, or destruction anywhere in sight. For a brief moment, he wondered if his mind was playing tricks on him or that the pervy sage was trying to punk him until he felt something tap against his foot, making him look down and see a jar that contained an oddly colored spider. He tilted his head as he picked the jar up and inspected the arachnid. It was black with an odd mix of red and orange and green colors. It didn't look like any species he was familiar with, but then he wasn't exactly an expert on spiders. It seemed to stare back at him, almost like it was giving him the stink eye. Creepy. Unknown to the Jinchuriki, there was a small crack on the bottom of the jar, where his palm was. More specifically, there was a small hole where a glass chip had fallen out, which gave the spider a clear opening. I wonder what kind of spider you are. He said aloud as he inspected the tiny thing. The spider didn't move much, but did seem to be watching him. Suddenly, it lunged downward towards the exposed opening and bit the Uzumaki on his palm. The pain felt like 1,000,000 hot needles had been jammed into his flesh. Out of reflex, the blonde threw the jar away as hard as he could and clutched at his bitten hand as the bite mark was already swelling and throbbing. Crap. Shit. That hurt. He growled out through gritted teeth as he felt a burning sensation coursing through his hand. He could feel sweat starting to accumulate on his body, and he found it began to breathe. It didn't take long for him to realize that he seriously needed help. As in, he needed help right now. He stumbled a bit as he tried to make his way towards the nearest village to find a doctor, but suddenly there was another explosion, prompting him to turn around and see some sort of portal that had appeared and then suddenly closed, however it had left someone or rather several someones behind. One was a middle-aged looking man who, for some reason, was carrying a baby with him, another was a pregnant woman riding a motorcycle, and finally there was a guy that was holding a guitar. All of them seemed to have some sort of spider symbol on them. What is happening? Naruto asked himself as he wondered if he might now be hallucinating as he found himself very freaked out right now. Oh. Hi. Sorry for, dropping in and all but we're looking for a weird spider. Have you seen it, buddy? The middle-aged man asked in a friendly voice as the baby he was holding seemed to extend her hand towards the whiskered teen as she cooed, which prompted the stranger, who was likely the child's father, to add, Mayday seems to like you already. That's a good sign. Sorry sweetie, but we don't have time to play. We're on important business. He cooed to his daughter with a small chuckle. You alright there, bruv? You don't look so good. The guy with the guitar stated as he approached the blonde, followed by the biker lady as she gave him a look of concern. Excuse me, but were you perhaps bitten by a spider recently? She asked the whiskered teen, who seemed to attempt to answer her question, but could only open and close his in response as his voice died in his and he was sweating bullets. Oh, that's not good. He's looking a bit iffy there. I think the poor chap is either gonna pass out or puke. The punk-themed man spoke as he and the biker woman took a step back cautiously. Bile filled the blonde's, and he lurched forward as he began to vomit up the contents of his stomach before his eyes rolled up into his head and his body went limp as he fell to the ground. Both. He did both. I'll be taking that response as a yes to my prior question. She muttered with a small sigh. It would seem that there was only one thing to do now. Later. Oh, man. That was one heck of an acid trip. Naruto muttered to himself as he slowly pushed himself up, believing that he had a very unusual dream. He ran a hand through his hair and then his nostrils flared as he caught the scent of tea. A cup of steaming hot tea was being held out and offered to him. Some kind to help with the headache, bro? A masculine voice asked as the blonde accepted the tea and took a long slow sip. His eyes then widened as he slowly turned and was greeted with the sight of a very cheerful looking man with a spider-themed costume. Oh, I know I am very handsome, but I already have a girlfriend. You can call me Paviter Prabhakar, but I prefer Pavi to my friends. I think we could be great friends. The spider-themed man, now identified as Pavi, greeted in a very jovial tone. Nice to meet you, Pavi. I'm Naruto Uzumaki and I am completely confused here. I am having a very weird day here. Naruto responded as he set the cup of tea off to the side, his words earning a soft chuckle from another man nearby who was leaning against the wall. The punk rocker from his dream, to be more specific. Trust me, bruv. We've all had weird days. Name's Hobie Brown. You took a rather nasty fall there. Like you had too many bevies and got really pissed. The one who called himself Hobie spoke as he tuned his guitar. Hey now, take it easy on the new guy, alright. Let's not overwhelm him. A female voice stated, with the Uzumaki recognizing her as the biker lady from his dream. How you doing? I'm Jessica Drew. Welcome to the Spider Society HQ. She started with a small smile, with the blonde teen blinking his eyes as he glanced between the three and recognized that they all shared a spider theme to their outfits. Is some kind of club or something? The whiskered teen asked, earning a small chuckle from the rocker as he gave the Uzumaki a small smirk. Or something, bruv. Was all he stated, earning an eye roll from Jessica. The whiskered teen then noted that there was some kind of armband around his wrist that glowed a soft blue and red. He gently ran his fingers along it, but was stopped when the expectant mother softly grabbed him by the wrist and pulled his hand away from the armband. Don't mess with that. That's TTS. A trans-dimensional stabilizer. Apparently, when you jump across dimensions, your atoms become unstable, you start glitching, and eventually die. That keeps you from glitching. She explained, her words making the whiskered teen blink his eyes. I am completely confused, but you mean to say that I'm not in my home dimension, right? He asked, which earned some grins from the trio. Join the club, bro. Your whole world is about to get so much bigger. It's gonna blow your mind. Pavi spoke excitedly, with Jessica slowly nodding in agreement as she gestured for the Jinchuriki to follow them. We'll take you to Miguel. He'll explain everything to you. The expecting heroine spoke, with the Uzumaki slowly nodding as he followed after the trio. He guessed this Miguel person was likely someone of authority, maybe even the big boss, and was also likely the guy that could send him home. Best to play along and be nice. His life was crap enough as it was, best not to add stranded in another dimension to the list. They exited the medical bay they were in and came out into a large and expansive area. All around, Naruto saw costumed people, typically wearing some variation of red and or blue, and all of them had a spider theme to them. He saw them swinging through the building on lines of webbing, he saw others walking upside down or along walls, as if it were normal to them, though for some reason he got a strong feeling that they weren't using chakra to do it. A question. Why am I even here? For medic treatment. Appreciate the help and all, but can't you send me home? I gotta. The whiskered teen tried to explain, but was stopped when Hobie held up a jar which contained a very familiar looking spider. Recognize this nasty little bugger? Gave you the rather nasty spider bite. Well, to give you the long and short, most everyone here all got their abilities from being bitten by a spider. The rocker explained as he gave the jar a small shake for emphasis. Abilities? Like walking on walls. I could already do that kind of thing. I don't see how Naruto spoke, but cut himself off as he felt a buzzing sensation in his head. Out of instinct, he ducked down and avoided being hit in the face with a guitar, which made Hobie smirk. Nice reaction time there, mate. That buzzing in your head. That's what's called your spider sense. An early warning system. Gives you a very nice heads up when danger is coming your way. There's also a few other goodies too. He explained and was then followed up by a very enthusiastic Pavi. Oh yeah. Being Spider-Man is so easy. You get the enhanced strength, speed, agility, healing factor and ooh. Some Spider-Men even get bonus powers. I wonder if you have any bonus powers. It'd be so cool if you got bonus powers. The exceptionally friendly teen stated, causing the Uzumaki to blink his eyes a few times. Wow. This guy's enthusiasm kind of reminded the whiskered Uzumaki of a puppy. A very hyper and energetic puppy. Naruto then heard what sounded like booming footsteps and saw wait, is that a T-Rex wearing one of those spider costumes? The whiskered teen asked, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him. You bet your ass that it is a T-Rex in a spider costume. Told you this place was gonna blow your mind. Pavi exclaimed with a laugh as he roughly patted the blonde on the shoulder. Come on. Almost there. Jessica gently piped in as they entered a dark hallway that was illuminated by the crimson glow of futuristic machines and tech that the Uzumaki couldn't identify. When they reached the end of the hallway, they found themselves in what appeared to be in some kind of laboratory. Everyone was looking up, prompting the Uzumaki to follow their gazes and see a man standing on an elevated platform of some kind. The man was staring at a set of holographic computer screens as the platform slowly descended. More than likely, this man was Miguel. Is the slowly descending platform and dark lab meant for dramatic effect or something? He asked in a hushed whisper towards Jessica, who had to suppress a laugh. It's kind of his thing. She replied quietly, earning a nod from the Jinchuriki. Well, he wasn't one to judge. Everybody had their quirks. Naruto Uzumaki. My name is Miguel O'Hara. I've been doing some homework on you. The man, now confirmed to be Miguel, spoke up in a neutral tone as he used a lone finger to swipe across a holographic screen which pulled up a picture of the blonde. Biological parents, unknown. Never adopted. Survived off a stipend in a crummy apartment. Struggled in school. Few friends. Resident Jinchuriki of your village. Helped in thwarting a deadly assassin who was later betrayed by his boss, a corrupt business tycoon by name of Gato. Took down fellow Jinchuriki Gaara, preventing his beast from turning your village into a litter box. Stopped a rogue Jonin and his gang from stealing a sacred water from Taki. Deposed a corrupt daimyo and placed the rightful daimyo, who was also an actress, on the throne of Snow Country. Attempted to apprehend your former teammate Sasuke Uchiha and failed after a near-death experience. Pierced through the chest by a lightning-based attack. Those are all the major highlights that come to my mind. What about covering it? Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So, would you kindly tell me why I am here? From what I've gathered, your entire organization consists of spider-themed superheroes from across various dimensions. Another thing I don't get is why. What's the purpose of such a massive group? The whiskered teen asked as he crossed his arms. The futuristic Spider-Man's face remained completely stoic as he answered, those are both excellent questions. To start from the beginning, we are all part of a network of universes which has been popularly coined as the Spider-Verse. Not the name I would have picked, but I digress. In virtually every universe, there is an iteration of the hero known as Spider-Man. We are all iterations of that very hero. Some are extremely similar, others are different, almost all share a common theme or elements. It is almost always the same. We are bitten by a mutated or radioactive spider, gain spider-like abilities, we lose someone we love, and it sets us on the path to becoming Spider-Man. These critical and repeating events are what is known as canon events. You could say it is like a script of the Spider-Verse. If one follows the canon events, everything runs smoothly. If the canon events are interrupted or distorted, then it could lead to the collapse of an entire dimension. I myself, at one point of time, by accident, caused a dimension to vanish. Our organization, the Spider Society, was formed to safeguard the integrity of the multiverse and prevent other dimensions from experiencing breaches in reality and in turn, prevent the collapse of said dimensions. Sometimes, due to the instabilities throughout the multiverse, things or people get displaced. Miguel explained as he took the jar containing the spider that had bitten Naruto and held it up. The spider is one such example. It had been displaced from its home dimension. Had we not retrieved it, it would have been unable to bite the potential Spider-Man from its universe, meaning the canon event would have been interrupted and the dimension would have crumbled. However, it has already bitten you. From my understanding, your dimension lacks a Spider-Man, now it seems the mantle is yours for your home dimension. Our goal is to train you so that you may safeguard your home and help preserve the multiverse. Miguel spoke as he finished his explanation and handed the spider off to Jessica. She took it with a nod and departed with it, likely to send it back home where it belonged. The whiskered teen slowly nodded as he absorbed all this information. It all sounded kind of crazy, but then he had already experienced his fair share of crazy since donning his shinobi headband. Little much in it. Stick around long enough and any concept of normality gets shot right out the window, bruv. Hobie spoke in a matter-of-fact tone as he rolled a guitar pick across his knuckles. I think I got the picture. Multiple universes, training, becoming a new Spider-Man. These canon events, it kind of reminds me of a certain someone who used to go on and on about destiny and fate. Maybe there are some things in life that are beyond our control, there are some things that will just happen regardless of what we do, say, or don't do, but that doesn't mean we are without free will. Still, the collapse of entire dimensions. That's all kinds of bad. Also, I have a question. What caused these instabilities in the first place? The Jinchuriki asked at the end, earning an almost barely perceptible nod of approval from Miguel. That is a very good question. I am actually kind of glad you asked. Miguel stated as he saw a holographic screen of a dark-skinned teenager that the Uzumaki didn't recognize. Meet Miles Morales of Earth 1610. About a year ago, a criminal known as Wilson Fiskaka the Kingpin attempted to create a machine known as the Collider to bring back his dead wife and son who died in an accident. Miles was bitten by a displaced spider from another universe and gained the abilities of Spider-Man himself, which in turn caused an unexpected chain reaction of events. The original Spider-Man of Earth 1610 was killed by the Kingpin and during his testing of the Collider caused several spider people to be pulled into Miles' world. The Collider itself was successfully destroyed, but even so, the consequences were still felt across the multiverse as breaks in reality and further displacements of individuals kept happening. I developed a means by which to safely traverse across the multiverse and founded the Spider Society to combat this chaos and restore everything as it is meant to be. The futuristic Spider-Man spoke in a lecturing voice with his hands clasped behind his back. Okay. Dangerous machines punched holes in reality. The original hero died and Miles took his place. I get all that, but I'm confused about something else now. If the original Spider-Man of 1610 wasn't supposed to die at that point of time, and Miles wasn't supposed to gain the spider powers since the spider itself was displaced, wouldn't that have already caused the script of canon events to go off the rails? I was also bitten by a mutant spider that had also been displaced as well. Naruto asked as he tried to process all of this information. As already explained, in your case there wasn't a Spider-Man in your world until you were bitten. Miles is an anomaly. He wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. Miguel stated in a somewhat gruff tone, feeling that the breaches in reality were partially the fault of Miles himself. Even so, it was still a breach of canon. So if that is the case, why is his universe still there? Why hasn't it disappeared? If the logic of your canon events holds up, then his universe should have already gone poof and into dust. Seems to me, and I might be spitballing a little here, that there might be a loophole or a bypass for these canon events. Naruto pointed out as he adopted a thinking pose. There was dead silence as the Spider-Men exchanged glances with one another, almost as if they themselves hadn't thought of it like that from that particular perspective. Miguel was the first to break the silence as he said, "We have spoken for less than 5 minutes, and you have already pointed out a potential flaw." He muttered at the end, with equal hints of awe and envy in his voice. I have to admit, the possibility of a loophole is an interesting idea. The Spider-Man of 2099 spoke as he turned his back to the blonde to hide a look of longing on his face, before adding a very tempting one too. The futuristic Spider-Man cleared his and schooled his features before turning towards the Jinchuriki once more and speaking in an even tone. As fascinating as that theory is, there are risks involved. If your theory is proven correct, it could provide us with more leeway to better protect the multiverse and the stability of the different dimensions. However, if your theory is wrong, then entire worlds and the people that live in them would be at risk if something were to go wrong. The blonde nodded in silent understanding. They currently had no knowledge of the exact nature of the aforementioned loophole, much less on how to properly exploit it. If they messed up, countless lives could be lost. He didn't want to have that kind of blood on his hands. Even if it was for the greater good to let certain events play out as they may have been meant to, it still put a bad taste in his dot. Still, it is an interesting idea. My thanks for putting it out there if nothing else. Miguel spoke as he gave a small pat on the blonde's shoulder, as if to congratulate him for his ingenuity. So what happens next? The whiskered teen asked in order to move things along, though he could already guess what came next, but wanted to be certain. We begin your training. Was all the futuristic Spider-Man stated in a blunt tone before continuing. I will warn you that it will not be easy. It will be very difficult. Just because you're new, don't expect any special treatment or coddling. At that, Jinchuriki gave a small scoff as he replied, I'm not asking for any of that. All I have ever wanted, all that I ever needed, was a fair chance. The Spider-Man of 2099 quietly regarded the young shinobi and his words, an almost barely noticeable smirk, appearing from the corner of his I may learn to like you. I will personally oversee your training. I will be tough on you, but also fair. You'll get your chance. I promise you that. Naruto gave a broad grin and then suddenly felt a strange weight on his shoulders and could also feel a new pair of eyes staring at him. He slowly turned his head and saw that an infant with red hair had perched on his shoulder. She smiled and giggled adorably and blew a raspberry in the whiskered teen's face before firing off a line of web and swinging away towards a nearby wall. Okay. That just happened. Who does she belong to? Naruto questioned, which was answered as a new voice could be heard calling out the name Mayday. A few moments later, a man in a robe appeared and looked up as he spotted his infant daughter. There you are. I'm gonna get ya. He spoke in a playful manner as he began crawling up the wall after the infant, who looked back at her father and blew a raspberry at him before crawling up higher at greater speed. Peter. We have talked about this. If you can't control your daughter then you can't bring her here. Miguel called out in clear annoyance, with both Hobie and Pavi snickering in the background. Oh, lighten up Miguel. She's only a baby. How much trouble can she gotcha? The man now identified time as Peter spoke and then called out at the end as he managed to catch up to his child and gently pried her off the wall before leaping down to the floor. He then placed her in the baby carrier that was strapped to him with a small and content smile. Kids, am I right? One day they're sleeping peacefully in their crib, then they just start climbing up walls, and Peter spoke and was then cut off midway as his daughter giggled and seemed to be pointing toward something. He followed where she was pointing and for the first time, took notice of the resident Jinchuriki. Hey now. Looky what we have here Mayday. A new Spider-Man. He spoke in a jovial tone to his daughter before extending his hand towards the blonde and continued, hey, how you doing? Peter B. Parker, at your service. This is my daughter, Mayday, don't mind her, she's a bit of a rascal. Naruto Uzumaki. Good to meet you both. The whiskered teen replied as he shook the father's hand. Peter. Where is Gwen? You are both supposed to report in after the futuristic Spider-Man spoke but was cut off by Peter. Yeah, Gwen is right behind me. She stopped for a shake. Anyways, Naruto, nice to meet you buddy. 2 questions, how long have you been Spider-Man and what is your world like? The spider parent asked with a chuckle. Honestly. Less than a day later, the whiskered teen answered but was interrupted as a female voice called out, hey guys. Naruto looked off to the side and saw a girl with blonde hair with pink highlights, carrying a chocolate milkshake as she stepped into the room. Sorry for being late. Had a killer sweet tooth. Anyways, the mission was a success, and the blonde girl spoke and then stopped as she locked eyes with the Jinchuriki. There was a pregnant pause in the air as the 2 blondes stared at one another, their faces reddening, and their breathing seemed to quicken. What is happening? Hello? Earth to Gwen. Peter asked as he waved a hand in front of the spider drummer's face to get her attention. No reaction. Oh, don't tell me. It is love at first sight. How Pavi chimed in, but before anyone could react, Gwen had dropped her milkshake and pounced on the Uzumaki, wrapping her legs tightly around his waist as the 2 heatedly made out with reckless abandon, not even bothering to suppress their dot. Oh my gosh, that escalated so quickly. Pavi shouted as his eyes almost bugged out his head. They're snugging mates. Snugging hard. Hobie added as he too stared at the scene with wide eyes, thinking that he had seen it all. The spider parent quickly turned around and covered his daughter's ears to shield her from the lewd sight and sounds as he shouted, can we keep this G-rated, people? There is a baby present. It was at this moment Jessica returned as she walked into the room, oblivious to the 2 blondes' activities while speaking. Alright now, our misplaced spider is back home where it belongs. Is our new recruit up to what in the hell? She shouted at the end as she finally took notice of the blondes that were heatedly making out. What is happening right now? The soon-to-be mother asked in complete confusion. Lila? Miguel asked, prompting his AI assistant to appear at his call as she began scanning the 2 blondes. Way ahead of you boss. Whoa. Seems like their pheromones are reacting very strongly to each other, which has triggered a massive hormonal rush, resulting in an intense urge or even need for them to know. The AI explained as she covered her face, wishing that she could unsee this particular scene. Should we stop them? What do we do? I am not sure what to do here. The resident Kai enthusiast asked as he nervously looked about, wanting to help the blondes, but while also worrying that he might make things worse. I don't think we could stop them even if we tried. Miguel started with a visibly uncomfortable look on his face. Gwen finally broke off as she looked into Naruto's eyes and shrieked, "My room." Now she then picked up the Uzumaki over her shoulder and quickly dashed off with him in tow. The other spider people shifted around in awkward silence, with Peter being the first to break the quiet. "Well, that settles that. Let's just let them work it out. Get it out of their system." His words prompted his colleagues to slowly nod in agreement. "I'll get Gwen some morning after pills. God knows she'll need them," Jessica muttered, earning some nods of understanding from the others, all the while trying to burn out the mental images of what had just transpired from their minds. Even Lila was busy trying to delete said images from her memory files. Yep. Another day in the glorious world of being Spider-Man. Hours passed as the two blondes indulged in each other's bodies with a ravenous hunger and almost mindless passion. They explored each other thoroughly, trying out different positions, as if experimenting to find whatever gave them the greatest dot. They could not keep their hands off each other, they were entwined almost every second, and they could not get enough of the taste and the feel of each other. By the time they had finally reached their limits, they were exhausted and could barely move. The day and night of intense lovemaking had come and gone, and already dawn was creeping up on them as the sun started to slowly ascend outside. Both blondes lied next to each other, finding themselves staring up at the ceiling with wide eyes as they had finally regained their senses. "Holy shit," was all the two blondes could say in unison as the reality of the situation set in. "Is it supposed to feel amazing?" Naruto asked, since this was the first time he had ever experienced flesh. "Wait, you mean to say that was your first time?" she questioned with an obviously surprised expression. From how good he had made her feel, she thought that he had prior experience. She was shocked to find that wasn't the case. "Yours too?" the whiskered teen asked, earning a nod from the spider drummer as they now realized that they had taken each other's firsts. The two found themselves staring up at the ceiling once more in awkward silence, neither one of them sure what to do, say or act now that the deed was done. The quiet bothered Naruto immensely until he finally asked nervously, "Should we start again?" Gwen rolled her eyes, an involuntary chuckle escaping her as she replied in a slightly snarky tone again. "Already? After we did it umpteen times just now. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is spongy and bruised." "Wait, what? Was that some kind of pop culture reference?" "That sounded like a pop culture reference. Never mind. Sorry, I phrased that wrong. I meant that maybe we should have a proper introduction now that we aren't going at it like we're in heat. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you despite these weird circumstances." He spoke with a somewhat nervous chuckle. The blonde drummer reached into her nearby nightstand and pulled out a lighter and lone cigarette, putting it between her as she lit it, taking a drag and coughing up some smoke before replying, "I'm Gwen. Gwen Stacy. Nice to meet you too, though next time, at least buy me dinner first." She added the last part in a teasing manner, making the Uzumaki blush. He took notice that she let out some more coughing as she inhaled some of the smoke and asked, "Are you okay there? No offense, but you don't strike me as a smoker." "I'm not. It may sound stupid, but I kinda decided to have one cigarette to mark the occasion of my first time. A sort of celebration, I guess," she replied as she took another drag, this time exhaling with more ease. She held the cigarette between her fingers and brought it to Jinchuriki's, as if to offer him a smoke. Deciding that one only got to live one, he silently placed his around the butt and took a long and hard drag, inhaling and then exhaling. He let out a few coughs, finding the taste of smoke not to his liking. How in the hell did Jonan Asuma smoke these things all damn day? Were his taste buds dead or something? "Yeah. Pretty sure this is gonna be my first and last cigarette," Gwen stated, since she didn't really enjoy the taste either. "If you don't mind my asking, what's your story exactly? How did you become a spider person?" Naruto asked, his question earning a small frown from the punkish girl. It would seem that he had hit a touchy subject. "Sorry. I shouldn't have asked. That was rude," he muttered in sincere apology, feeling bad for prying into her personal history. He was surprised when she began speaking. "Like most everyone here, I gained my powers after being bitten by a spider. One day, my best friend, Peter Parker, my universe's iteration of Peter Parker, snapped after being repeatedly bullied and mutated into a lizard-like creature after taking a serum, and I couldn't save him. I tried to. I really did, but he didn't make it. Afterwards, my dad, who is a police captain, put me at the top of the most wanted list, not knowing he was chasing after his own daughter. About a month ago I was cornered by my dad. I was out of webbing and had no way out, so I played the only card I had. I revealed myself to him and he tried to arrest me. I was basically chased out of my own home. Miguel and Jessica allowed me to come here and join the Spider Society and have been training under Jess ever since. I felt so lonely and frustrated, having to bottle up my secrets and everything about being Spider-Woman, and the one person I probably could have told, my dad, and I just didn't say anything until it was too late. A part of me wonders if I should have told my dad about my identity sooner. Maybe it would have made things better, maybe it wouldn't. Who knows? Too little, too late for what ifs. At the end of her story, the whiskered teen gave Gwen a sympathetic look. That's awful. I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Losing your father and home like that, and your friend. It still hurts, doesn't it? He asked, which earned a nod from the young Spider-Woman. Yeah. I miss him a lot. I feel like I should have done more to protect him, but failed. So I try to protect others now to make up for it. She replied in a somber tone. Well, you told me your story. Only fair I tell you mine. He stated, prompting Gwen to take one last drag before snuffing out her cigarette and rolling to her side to face the Jinchuriki and offer him her full and undivided attention. He scratched his cheek and then began to share his own story. On the night I was born, an entity known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune, or nine-tailed fox, went on a rampage in my village, Konoha. Our Yandame Hokage, our village leader, stopped it by sealing it away into me, making me into a walking prison for the beast. A lot of people died that night. I was alone, an orphan, no parents, never adopted, never put into a foster home. I largely had to raise myself and lived off of a stipend in a crummy apartment. The Sandame Hokage put a gag order on the village to keep the older generation from openly talking about my Jinchuriki status to try and protect me from persecution, but it kind of had the opposite effect, and I remained unaware of this until much later. A lot of people blamed me for the Kyuubi's rampage, almost as if I were an accomplice or something, and so I became the scapegoat of their grudge. Parents would keep their kids away from me, stores would try to overcharge me or sell me almost expired stuff, small things like that, but it piled up. School wasn't much better. I struggled a lot, had a lot of trouble making friends, and I was dubbed the dead last because of my poor performance. Less said about that, the better. I felt so lonely that I began pulling pranks just to get attention, even if it got me into trouble, or I accepted anyone that so much as acknowledged my existence, good or bad, which in the long run ended up hurting me even more. I finally got out of the academy and became a shinobi, putting me in the village's military, and things slowly got better. Got put on a team with Sakura Haruno, a girl I was crushing on, but had a hair-trigger temper and would hit me for even the littlest things, and with Sasuke Uchiha, the academy's golden boy who was obsessed with getting revenge on his older brother for the murder of his family and genocide of his whole clan. Fast forward a bit and Sasuke decides to go rogue to seek greater power from one of the most wanted rogue shinobi in my world, Orochimaru. Sakura was crushing hard on Sasuke and begged me to bring him home. I promised her that I would. In hindsight, it was a poorly made promise. I caught up to Sasuke and we clashed. I thought that I could save him from himself. I thought that I could stop him and bring him home. I failed. At the moment of truth, I could have beaten him, but I hesitated and froze up and almost got killed. As he spoke, the memory of Sasuke's Chidori flashed in the whiskered teen's mind and his hand started to tremble, with Gwen immediately taking notice of it. Her hand muttered softly as she saw how it shook, pursuing her. She took his trembling hand into her own and brought it to her cheek and gently rubbed her cheek against it, her flesh being soft and warm. Within moments, the shaking stopped as the Jinchuriki took a deep breath. He wasn't sure why, but he felt himself quickly relaxing. Gwen's touch was soothing. He wasn't sure why, but it definitely felt nice. What happened next? She asked him, wanting him to finish his tale. I left to go train and get stronger so that I may settle the score. A year came and went, but it felt like a waste, like I wasn't making any real progress, and then I was bitten by a weird spider and brought straight here. Then you walked in and you knew the rest. He answered, not really wanting to bore her with the details of his training trip or share any information about his so-called teacher Jiraiya, at least not at this time. Wow. That has to be the saddest story that I've ever heard. Here I am, bitching about how lonely I was, but I had my dad. You didn't have anyone. She muttered as she gently ran her thumb along the back of his hand. She then asked him, have you gotten help? For your hand? I don't think it's a physical problem. I think it's up here. He stated as he tapped a finger to his head and then added, I intend to get help. There's really only 2 people I trust for that sort of thing though. Until then, I'm pretty sure I can hold it together. You know you, but don't try and force yourself to keep going until you finally crack. If you ever want to talk, you can talk to me about it. She offered gently, making him smile and nod. They then settled into a comfortable silence as the blonde drummer snuggled up closer to the whiskered teen and embraced him. So, what happens now? I'm not really sure where to go from here. I'm not a one and done kind of guy. I'm not really interested in one-night stands, you know. Naruto asked since he had never been in a real relationship before, much less had with someone he had only just met. Yeah. I'm not into that sort of thing either. I'm honestly not sure what to do either. Gwen replied, unsure of what to do about their newfound intimacy. She could definitely see herself growing to really care about him and possibly fall in love with him. Would it be too soon or too late to ask if you'd like to date? I know that's probably really forward of me, but you're really amazing, and wow, this is embarrassing. I've never done this before. He admitted, making the blonde girl chuckle lightly. I wouldn't mind going out with you. We can get to know each other better. See where things go. Also, I don't know why, but I think we merely click. You know, on a personal level. Like, there's this connection between us. Something that is really hard to describe, but I think we can both feel it. She told him, her voice was gentle and soft with the Uzumaki nodding in agreement. He had only just met her, but for some reason he could definitely feel that they may have a connection. He hugged her back and held her close to him, with her snuggling even closer to him. They lied there, their naked bodies pressed against each other, their skin touching, his head on her shoulder and hers resting atop his. They remained in this position for a few moments, and then almost as if in unison, their stomachs began to loudly grumble for food. They both chuckled with Naruto asking breakfast. In response to his question, Gwen smiled and nodded eagerly. Breakfast would be amazing right now. She stated as the Uzumaki broke away from her and got up from the bed, he slipped on his pants and then began to make his way towards the kitchen area of her apartment. He stumbled a bit and let out a loud whoa. Prompting the Spider Woman to ask, are you okay there? Fine. I'm fine. Just I think we're both gonna be walking funny for a while. He replied as he walked with a very noticeable limp. The blonde drummer burst into giggles, her laughter sounding like music to his ears. Guess we had a little too much fun, huh? She teased, her remark earning a nod from the whiskered teen who could only chuckle and blush in agreement. As he made his way towards the kitchen he called out, anything in particular you want? Gwen got up from her bed and slipped on a t-shirt and pair of panties as she replied, anything's fine. I'm not feeling picky. Bacon and eggs it is then. How do you like your eggs? Naruto asked as he opened the refrigerator and started to take out the needed ingredients. Scrambled. Please and thank you. She responded as she limped her way towards the living area and then asked, need any help? Appreciate the offer, but I'm good. He answered as he took a bowl out from a cabinet and cracked open an egg into the bowl and whisked it. As he did so, there was a chime sound that likely came from the doorbell, prompting Gwen to call out that she'd get it. The spider drummer approached the door and opened it, revealing the visitor to be her mentor Jessica. So had a good time? The expectant mother asked with a small smirk and then looked past her student, spying the whiskered teen who was in the process of making breakfast, and then offered the drummer a bottle of pills and added some morning after pills for you, just to be safe. Thanks. Gwen replied as she accepted the bottle and popped off the cap before shoving a pill into her and immediately swallowed it in one quick gulp. No problem. We'll be making arrangements for him to stay at his own place during his training. I needed to talk to our new friend, and Jessica spoke to inform her student of what was to come next, but was interrupted by her student. Actually, Naruto is welcome to stay here. With me. Gwen started with a blush and for a brief moment questioned her own sanity for opening up her apartment to a guy that she had just met. Still, there was definitely something special about him. I am? Naruto asked as he blinked his eyes in surprise, not that he was eavesdropping, but they were well within earshot. He is? The spider biker asked as she too gave an equally surprised look. He is. Gwen spoke in confirmation with a decisive nod. Was this happening? Yes. Yes it was. This was happening. Jessica looked between the two blondes a few times and then gave an almost shit-eating grin as she read young love or something like that to herself before speaking. If that's okay with you, then that shouldn't be a problem. She then directed her attention to the Jinchuriki and stated, we'll begin your training as Spider-Man tomorrow to give you some time to settle in. The whiskered teen gave an appreciative nod and replied, much obliged and thanks. I'm looking forward to it. Though before I get started on my training, is it okay if I check in with someone back home? Explain the situation. At his question, the expectant mother adopted a thinking pose before nodding as she replied, I don't see the harm. Lem know when you're ready and we'll get you where you need to go. I'll be back later. Jessica then gave the two blondes a wink and clicked her in a suggestive manner as she closed the door behind her. The blondes blushed a bit with Gwen sitting down at her table as she observed the Uzumaki continue cooking breakfast. Neither of them could have possibly predicted how this day would turn out. Though for Naruto Uzumaki, he already knew that things would be much more wild and interesting from here on. He would need to master both his abilities as the newest Spider-Man and as a Jinchuriki. Hopefully his newest abilities would give him the edge he needed in the coming days. Miguel hummed quietly to himself in thought as he stared at a series of holographic screens. No. 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 Definitely not. He muttered to himself as he ran through various simulations, running through line after line of data. Unfortunately, each simulation ended the same way. "Well, now I never thought I'd see you divert from your preserve," the Canon minced. The voice of Jessica spoke from behind him, making the futuristic Spider-Man sigh. "I haven't. However, that boy, Naruto's loophole theory isn't something to be ignored either. I have been running simulations, trying to find out what the loophole is, but the end result is always oblivion. Unfortunately, I don't have the needed data. If I knew more," then he replied and then fell silent as he rubbed his temples. "You miss her, don't you?" Jessica asked, earning a small nod from the founding member of the Spider Society. "Yes. I just didn't mean for her and her universe to disappear. If Naruto's theory is correct, then perhaps it could bring some closure. Not just for me, but for many other Spider people. The ones that never got to say goodbye, the ones that are still hurting from their losses," he openly admitted. Some time ago, he happened upon a universe where his counterpart had a child, a daughter. Miguel was killed, and so the futuristic Spider-Man stepped in his deceased iteration's place to care for his daughter. For a while, Miguel enjoyed being a parent and family man. Unfortunately, because he had meddled with the canon of that universe, by taking the place of his counterpart, the canon of that realm had come undone, and everything had vanished. He was forced to watch as the girl he tried to raise had disappeared from his very arms. Since then, Miguel thought it best not to meddle with the canon events ever again, so that no universe would suffer a similar fate. Still, the idea of a loophole was too tempting to ignore. He supposed researching the possibility of a loophole was something of a pet project now. Unfortunately, without the proper information, it would likely remain a dead end. Until it was proven to be 100% safe to do so, Miguel had no intentions of risking the safety of another universe ever again. He switched off the screens and asked, "Where is our newest recruit? Has lodging already been arranged?" The expecting heroine chuckled as she replied, "Apparently Gwen took it upon herself to let him stay in her apartment, believe it or not. They're enjoying some breakfast right now. Also, Naruto wants to pay a visit to someone to keep them in the loop on what is happening." The Spider-Man of 2099 nodded in understanding as he spoke. "That's fine. I had a feeling that would be the case. It would be in the interests of all parties that he keeps someone informed. Him being missing would likely cause potential confusion and chaos, given his status as a military weapon." The chime sound came from overhead as the holographic form of Lila appeared as she adjusted her signature heart-shaped glasses. "Hey folks. Just got the results of our new recruit's blood. He definitely has additional abilities. Wanna have a little look at what he's got going on?" she asked in a rather excited and upbeat tone. When the Jinchuriki had been first brought to the Spider Complex, a sample of his blood had been taken to get a read on his capabilities as a newly created Spider-Man. "We will wait for Naruto to arrive." The futuristic Spider-Man spoke, though one could see that he was quite interested in the results. "I'll check back with him in a bit." Jessica spoke with a small grin, knowing that the boy would be quite excited to hear the results for himself. She was also looking forward to seeing what kind of Spider-Man he would become. Meanwhile, with Naruto. "How's the food?" the whiskered teen asked his brand new roommate as the spider drummer dug into her plate of eggs and bacon. He had only ever cooked for himself over the years, so he hoped that the meal would be to her liking. Especially considering how she unexpectedly but generously allowed him to stay in her apartment with her. He wanted to make a really good impression and contribute in some capacity. The last thing he wanted was to be a freeloader. Gwen chewed slowly, savoring the taste before swallowing as she spoke. "It is delicious. You really know your way around a kitchen, huh?" she asked with a small smile, her words making him blush a bit since he had never gotten praised for his cooking before. "Yeah. I kinda had to learn how to cook for myself growing up. Living alone, I had to grow up fast," he replied as he picked at his plate shyly, though his words made her frown slightly as she felt sympathy for him. She decided to lighten the mood by changing the subject and asked, "I'm curious, do you play any instruments or anything like that?" At this, the Uzumaki shook his head since he had never really had the chance to learn. Living off a limited stipend meant that he had to budget very carefully, and there were many things and luxuries that had been outside of his price range, though looking back on it, maybe he should have invested in a more productive hobby. "Nope. I can sing, though I don't know how good I'd be. Never sang anywhere outside the shower and never in front of somebody else." "I take it you're a drummer?" he asked at the end while pointing to a drum set that was sitting in the corner of the living area. "Oh yeah, it's a hobby of mine. I'll have to give you a demonstration sometime. In exchange, I demand you sing for me." She spoke in a playful manner at the end, making him chuckle, since that sounded like a fair trade. He took a bite of fluffy scrambled eggs, followed by a piece of bacon as he asked, "Are you in a band or do you play alone?" His question earned a deep frown from his fellow blonde as she tapped the side of her plate a few times and bit her lip. "I've been through several bands. None of them really clicked for me. Guess that means I'm a solo act for the time being. Ah well, at least I can practice in peace now. Walls are soundproof, so I don't have to worry about bothering any potential neighbors. She stated while mentally thanking the heavens that nobody could have heard what they were doing between the sheets earlier, thanks to the aforementioned soundproofing. You said you joined your village's military. What was that like? If you ask me, you seem kind of young to be in the military. Your world trains child soldiers. She asked out of curiosity, finding it both unusual and cruel to have children become soldiers at such a young age. Jessica had frequently warned her that not every world was alike and often had differing customs or ways of life. But children, as soldiers, started off kind of slow at first. I'll go into more detail later. Now, how do I put this? Yeah, my world trains kids to be fighters, but it is voluntary, we aren't forced into it or conscripted. Missions are assigned based on risk assessment ranging from D to S rank. D ranks are the easiest and can consist of things like weeding gardens, walking dogs, and other chores like that or chasing after Tora. Don't ask about Tora. Just don't. He responded as the memory of razor-sharp claws made his skin crawl. Still feels wrong. She muttered bitterly, with a Uzumaki casually shrugging as he replied, I don't see the distinction here. Excuse me? She questioned as she raised an eyebrow. Distinction? What distinction was he talking about? There's a lot of superheroes that start off at a young age, right? That goes around, waging a war on crime, fighting bad guys, risking their lives and whatnot. Only difference I see is that most heroes adhere to a no-killing rule, which is fair enough, since that would be your prerogative. A shinobi or a samurai is expected to fight and kill. Sometimes the missions I went on were pretty risky. I'm just lucky I've been able to come out on top so far, even so, I have helped save some lives too. He clarified, making the blonde drummer pursue her thoughtfully. He wasn't wrong. Hell, she was bitten by her spider when she was 12 and began her career as Spider-Woman to fight crime. A responsibility and path that she chose for herself from a young age, much like Naruto did when he decided to become a ninja. Yeah, he was right, there wasn't much distinction when he put it like that. Have you ever been killed before? She asked without thinking, but was surprised when the whiskered teen held up a lone finger. Once. He had been killed once before. It was on a mission to guard a famous actress. What we didn't realize at the time was that she was actually the rightful daimyo to Snow Country. Her uncle tried to kill her, he murdered a lot of people too. I ended up killing him when he crashed into a machine that helped change Snow Country's climate from winter to spring on a dime. He answered honestly as he bit off a piece of bacon. And that didn't bother you? Taking a life? She asked with a raised eyebrow, still feeling haunted by the death of her old friend Peter. While his death was indeed a tragic accident, she still felt responsible for it. For a bit, yeah, but not for long. I did it to protect myself and my client, Koyuki-san. If I didn't, then he would have killed me, then her, and who knows how many more people. He spoke in a clear and rational tone, and then stated if I had done it casually or taken it, then I would be seriously worried. That's a very pragmatic outlook. She muttered quietly with a thoughtful expression, wondering if that was how her father felt whenever an event came, that he had no choice but to use lethal force. Does that bother you? That I have killed? That I don't have a rule against killing? He asked, curious to know her thoughts. He had never thought that he would actually be a part of the organization of superheroes. Now he was worried that he'd be a pariah again due to the blood on his hands, even if that blood belonged to a tyrant. A little bit. I guess. She reluctantly admitted that, while she didn't want to hurt his feelings, she couldn't bring herself to lie either, as she then stated. I guess I just don't like the idea of killing people if it can be avoided. Though maybe I'm just being biased. I was raised by a police captain after all. Inchuriki nodded in understanding as he spoke. I don't like the idea of killing either. However, I am not gonna hold myself back with a no-kill rule. I'll only do what is necessary, no more and no less. The spider drummer was a little bit taken aback by his response. His tone wasn't angry, it wasn't dismissive or cold. Just neutral. He wasn't making any excuses either. He was simply laying out his thoughts on the matter, and she had to respect him for being so candid about it. To be frank, while most spider people have a strict policy against killing, there are those who will do what they need to do when pushed, and a few that have killed or are willing to kill. Jessica tells me not to overthink it and to just leave it to each Spider-Man's discretion. Gwen spoke with a small frown as she ate a bit more of her breakfast. Probably better that way. Not every Spider-Man can be the same and expect to live up to the same standards. Besides, the more restrictions you have, the more you're bound to break them. Unfortunately, in my world, you have to learn to operate in shades of gray. Not much room for black and white type views. The Uzumaki reasoned, earning a nod from his blonde companion, as she had to admit that his words were true. Also, technically speaking, each Spider-Man's home dimension was essentially their turf. So the rules would be different from Spider-Man to Spider-Man, herself included. How exactly is crime handled in your world? Do you have an active police force? She asked, wondering how his dimension maintained law and order. Quite naturally, being the daughter of a police captain, learning how various worlds protected people and upheld the law was something of a subject of interest for her. Smaller villages either have their own small police forces to patrol around and keep the peace, and failing that, hire shinobi to deal with greater threats. The major villages, like my village Konoha, rely on their military, the shinobi, to enforce the law and are granted authority and impunity to deal with the criminal element as they see fit. Say, if a shinobi sees someone being assaulted, then he is free to arrest, kill, or castrate the rapist if they so choose. For higher profile cases, they're dealt with by our village leader, the Hokage. He answered to the best of his ability. He wasn't what one would call an expert of the law, but he did believe in let the punishment fit the crime. That sounds like a type of system that would be open to abuse. Gwen muttered, since the idea of military forces upholding the law with no real consequences was a very dangerous thing. Never said it was perfect and it can be abused. Fortunately, anyone that is caught abusing their power has their abilities permanently sealed away, and for many shinobi that is a sentence worse than death. It isn't a perfect system, but it is largely effective as most street-level crime is virtually non-existent. Not to be rude, but any form of government or law enforcement would undoubtedly be subject to abuse. What matters is how you deal with the people manipulating the system to their advantage to discourage others from doing the same, at least that's how I see it. He replied thoughtfully, especially since, in his opinion, there wasn't much point to law and order if they couldn't or wouldn't be enforced by those in charge of maintaining them. Sure, there were criminals like Gato that hid behind the scenes and covered up their crimes, but it made the Jinchuriki all the more determined to learn more and get stronger, so that he may drag such people into the light to face their punishment. There was an awkward silence between them, with Gwen feeling guilty for bringing down the mood with her questions. She felt a twinge of worry, wondering if he thought that she was some kind of buzzkill. The Uzumaki looked at the punkish girl, almost sensing her distress. He then got a little smirk as he decided to tell her a little joke to lift her spirits and said knock knock. Gwen looked at him in surprise. A knock knock joke? Seriously? A small smirk tugged at her as she decided to play along and spoke. Who's there? Ishes. He replied while leaning forward a bit with a grin. Ishes who? She asked, playing along, already anticipating the punchline. Ishes a very bad joke. He answered, his grin becoming wider, his words earning a loud snort of laughter from his fellow blonde as she chuckled at the corny joke. Not bad. She replied, making him blush a bit as he rubbed the back of his neck, happy that his attempt at a joke wasn't a flop. At least he got her to smile and it felt nice. Just seeing her smile like that and hearing her laugh. It made him feel warm and fuzzy inside. It felt way different than it was with Sakura. With his pink-haired teammate, she would often pummeled him for even slightly annoying her. He tried so hard to earn her approval, even going so far as making what was potentially a bad promise to bring Sasuke back. Was that what was known as a toxic relationship? With Gwen it just felt right. He wasn't sure how to describe it. He was sure that if he had attempted to tell Sakura a joke, she would have clocked him on the head. Gwen. She laughed. Actually, I laughed and smiled. She was accepting of him. It kind of gave him the feeling of butterflies in his stomach. With the last bits of their meals finished, Gwen quickly collected the plates and utensils and balanced them on one hand. The whiskered teen was quick to get up as he said, "You don't have to do that. I can handle dish duty." Once those words left him, she gave him a funny look and tilted her head to the side. "Wait, you were planning to wash these by hand?" She asked curiously as he could only blink his eyes. His reaction or lack thereof was enough of a response for her, as she then asked, "You didn't have a dishwasher, did you?" "Not a working one. The one in my apartment was busted and I couldn't afford to have it fixed. I just washed everything by hand," he admitted with a small sigh. Gwen's expression shifted, looking sad and sympathetic at the fact that his life growing up had been rough. Just exactly how bad did he have it? She then felt that her life was somewhat easy compared to his. Her family wasn't exactly wealthy, but she didn't really want anything either. Now that she thought about it, this must be a huge adjustment for him. "Hey. Don't worry about it. I know you're trying to make a good impression and all, but relax. You don't have to fuss over every little thing," she stated reassuringly. He rubbed the back of his neck as he responded, "Sorry, I've never lived with anyone else. Never had a roommate or anything. This is new to me." She smiled a bit, finding it a little endearing how much he was trying. She rinsed off the plates and utensils before depositing them into the dishwasher, before pouring the appropriate amount of detergent into the compartment, starting the cycle, and closing the machine. "I was wondering if you plan on going public with your identity." She asked out of curiosity, wondering if he would hide his true self as most spider people did or would choose to forego secrecy and go public as her teacher Jessica did. That's a fair question. It's my understanding that most heroes keep their civilian identities a secret to protect their friends, family, loved ones, and also to give them a sense of peace and privacy. Me? In my world. There isn't really much point, to be honest. It'd probably be a waste of time and energy, not to mention there is the fact that my abilities would be largely considered as pretty much normal. Though in any other world that isn't my own, I'd probably have to wear a disguise or something just to stay inconspicuous, most particularly if I'm hunting down crooks. He explained with a shrug, he didn't really like the idea or have any reason to hide his identity back home. Your boat, your call, still a world where you don't have to bother hiding. That sounds nice. She spoke with a hint of envy, a small part of her wishing that she could have been born in a world where she didn't have to hide her true self. Though on the upside, she felt that she could be open with Naruto. He seemed like a pretty stand-up and understanding kind of person, which is perhaps what she needed most. Someone that she didn't need to keep secrets from. There was a chime from the apartment doorbell, no doubt signaling that Jessica had returned to collect the Jinchuriki. Prompting both blondes to share a quick nod as the spider drummer opened the door, which revealed the spider biker herself as expected. Hey there. Am I interrupting anything this time? She asked with a small smirk, making the two roommates shake their heads. Nah. We were just talking. Naruto stated truthfully, causing the expectant mother to give a small ah in understanding. I see. At any rate, we need to get some things squared away before your training begins. We need you to get fitted for a costume or two, let you take care of any personal business at home, and I think you'll be excited to know that we tested your blood from a sample we collected while you were passed out for additional abilities and got the results back. Miguel wanted to wait for your arrival before they were revealed. Jessica stated, earning a raised eyebrow from the whiskered teen. He recalled Pavi mentioning bonus powers. Naturally, these results were of great interest to the Uzumaki as he wondered what else he now had up his sleeves that could help even the odds back home. Okay, before we get into that, I am dying to know something. Gwen interjected with a small frown, her hands on her hips, as both the Jinchuriki and the expecting mother already had a clue what the blonde drummer was gonna ask about, as the former ballerina asked, what the hell happened to me and Naruto? We were just all over each other and you know. Still trying to figure that part out. From what we know, your pheromones drove you both crazy for each other, aside from that, it's a mystery. There was a case where two spider people who so happened to be bitten by the same spider were really into each other due to a similar pheromone problem. The motorcyclist answered to the best of her ability, though honestly it was still a mystery. Except me and Naruto were bitten by two different spiders. Unless they were like, super compatible or something. I dunno. I guess it's no use focusing on something that's already happened. Gwen muttered with a sigh, still wondering why she and Naruto had just lost all control when they first met. Not that what happened was all bad, but the last thing she wanted was for her and or Naruto to lose their minds like that again. I promise we'll look into it, but for now things look like they're under control, and Naruto needs to get set up. Come on kiddo. Not a good idea to keep Miguel waiting. Jessica stated as she gestured for the whiskered teen to follow her. He looked back at his new roommate and was about to ask if she wanted to come along, but before she could speak she gave him a small smile and put him on the cheek. The gesture surprised him as he found himself blushing, then took notice that Gwen also seemed surprised that she had done it as well. I'll see you later, Kay. She said, earning a nod from the Jinchuriki as he walked away with Jessica, while the spider drummer watched their retreating forms. When they were out of sight, Gwen retreated into her apartment and asked herself what is wrong with me. And decided that it might be a good time to practice on the drum while she had some free time and beat out her emotions or something. She likes you a lot. You two must have really meshed well together. Jessica noted with a small smirk, making the Uzumaki rub the back of his head. Well, once we regained our senses and everything, we kinda talked for a while. About different stuff, but mostly we shared some of our respective backgrounds. I think, somehow or other, we ended up seriously bonding. He muttered since he wasn't sure how to clearly define their relationship yet. They had, so were they lovers? Maybe. They had also agreed to try dating and see where things led. So were they boyfriend and girlfriend? He wasn't certain. Gwen had allowed him to stay in her apartment with her, so they were now definitely roommates. Oh, to be young and in love. The expectant mother spoke with a wink, teasing the whiskered blonde before adding, I hope you don't plan on doing anything to break her heart. That girl's already had a rough time. Naruto hummed in thought as he ignored her teasing and answered in a serious tone. She told me about what happened with her dad. After we talked for a while. We also mutually agreed that neither of us were interested in one-night stands and that we would date and see how things went from there. Honestly, she seems really nice and cool, and I just hope that we get along. Jessica internally smiled at this, he was shy, she could tell. Likely never had a girlfriend before. A shame. Nice boy like him. Handsome. He looked like he might be the type. Oh, and he also cooked breakfast. Yeah. That was definitely a good sign. A sign that he was a potential keeper for Gwen. Now that she thought about it, should she play matchmaker? Try and encourage them to get closer? Probably wouldn't take much. One thing was for certain, those two would definitely be good for each other. They passed by the detention area, with the Uzumaki taking notice of various people that were kept trapped behind some sort of barriers. Some were different, others looked highly similar. Displaced villains. Naruto asked as he connected the dots, earning a nod from the spider biker. Yep. Like the spider that bit you, these clowns were all displaced from their own dimensions. One of our jobs is to scoop them up and process them with a device that we have dubbed the Go Home system. The special teleporter that, as the name strongly implies, sends the villains back to their home dimension so as to preserve the canon and thus prevent the collapse of said dimension. From there that world's respective spider person handles the rest. She explained, with the Uzumaki silently absorbing this information. Hard to believe that one machine caused so much damage. Naruto stated since he found it difficult to believe that one singular machine could cause such havoc across dimensions. His words prompted a dry laugh from the older spider woman. I know, right? This one, the Kingpin's collider. It did. Still she was about to speak further but was cut off by the Jinchuriki. Please don't say another word or you'll end up jinxing us. You were about to say something that involves the words could and worse, weren't you? He asked, making the expectant mother freeze up with her hanging open slightly. Yeah, he was right. She was about to say that forbidden phrase. Close call there. Shutting up now before I say something that damns us all. She spoke in a sheepish tone as the two shared a quick laugh. They then entered Miguel's private laboratory, where he could still be seen hard at work on his newest pet project. As he stared hard at the holographic screens, the futuristic Spider-Man gave a small sigh of aggravation as he closed the screens down. Evidently frustrated by the lack of progress. He then sensed the presence of the two visitors and turned around. Ah. Excellent. You're here. Miguel stated with another sigh, this one sounded like a more tired sort. There were also dark circles under his eyes. Had he slept at all recently? Sorry for the wait. You okay there? No offense meant, but you look like you didn't sleep much. Naruto pointed out as he tilted his head with the Spider-Man of 2099, pinching the bridge of his nose for a few moments. Don't worry about it. I stayed up working on a side project. That's all. I suppose I was too engrossed in it. No matter. We have a lot to get done, may as well get started with the results of your blood. Lila. Miguel stated, when he called out Lila's name, the Uzumaki raised an eyebrow and wondered who she was. Another spider person. He was surprised when the hologram of a woman with light brown hair, pink heart-shaped sunglasses and a retro-looking white coat appeared. Hey THERE, I'm Lila. That's shorthand for Lyrate Lifeform Approximation, but Lila is way more catchy. Sorry for not greeting you on arrival, you were kind of distracted. ANYWHO, consider me your gal pal in the chair. Need to go somewhere? I can zap you over faster than you can say fin fang foom. Need all the juicy details. I can hook you up with a limitless fountain of information from databases all across the multiverse. Oh, and do feel free to admire me and sing my praises about what an amazing assistant I am, sweetheart. The woman now identified as Lila greeted in a chipper and upbeat tone. Naruto could only blink his eyes a few times in astonishment, yet another marvel had appeared before him in his unexpected journey of becoming Spider-Man. A computer that could essentially communicate at the same level as a human being. A true artificial intelligence. Like from a science fiction movie. He didn't think such a thing was even possible. And again, with access to the multiverse there was no telling what sorts of things would appear. Suffice it to say, he took an immediate liking to the AI and her easygoing personality. Wow. You are awesome. I love that retro look too. The whiskered teen said without thinking, his words earning a peal of laughter from the AI as she responded, you are freaking adorable. Why couldn't we have one of you earlier? I think we are going to be super mega awesome best friends. Say cheese. She spoke at the end excitedly as she posed alongside the whiskered teen and seemingly snapped a picture on some sort of digitized camera. Lila. The blood results. His spider abilities please. Miguel asked impatiently as he snapped his fingers while Jessica slowly shook her head with a cheeky smile. She honestly wasn't sure how such a serious guy like him created an AI like Lila, perhaps it was during happier times. Some days, it felt like the Spider-Man of 2099 was taking on the entire weight of the multiverse and it was slowly crushing him. Hopefully someday that could be turned around. Oh. Right. Results. Yes. Lila spoke as she clapped her digital hands together and began rapidly rubbing them as she gave a big grin and then took on a tone that sounded like a game show host presenting to you the abilities of our newest Spider-Man Naruto Uzumaki. First, our lucky ninja has the ability to produce his own organic webbing. No need for web shooters that can be damaged, jammed up, or run out of web fluids. Second, he has twin retractable stingers in his hands that are capable of releasing a toxin that causes paralysis. Third, he has night vision, pretty self-explanatory right there. Fourth, he has the ability that is frequently called the Venom Blast that can create bursts of bioelectric energy on physical contact with another and can stun the victim. Joy buzzer trick, anyone? Fifth, it would seem that my new favorite ninja can mentally control and communicate with spiders. Could come in handy. Those little spiders could be your little spies. Last and certainly not least, our new recruit is capable of camouflage. Perfect for stealth. Naruto Uzumaki, you just scored the spider power jackpot of jackpots. Congratulations. Cue the fanfare. Lila shouted at the end, prompting loud blasts of trumpets to sound out as digital confetti started popping and exploding around the spider people. Huh. That's interesting. I have met many spider people, and not one of them possessed such a wide array of abilities. Miguel muttered as he looked at the whiskered teen in an appraising manner. There was no room for doubt this boy was definitely something special. The whiskered teen crossed his arms as he took in this newfound information. Most of, if not all of those abilities could come in handy as a ninja. Now he just needed to learn how to master and control them. Fortunately, he was certain that his new teacher, the futuristic Spider-Man, would be able to help with that. Well now, this is gonna be fun. We should probably get you fitted for a costume. Jessica stated, with the AI giggling as she immediately began scanning the whiskered teen for his measurements, surrounding him with red and blue lights. Oh, I've got so many suggestions for you. Tell me, do you have any particular preferences? Lila asked with a broad grin as she was very eager to play fashion designer for the Jinchuriki. I don't think tights or spandex would really suit me. Don't want anything too flashy either. He responded with the upbeat AI, giving him a sly and somewhat mocking look as she quipped flashy. Really? That orange jumpsuit seems pretty flashy to me. Not exactly something a ninja should be wearing if you want to blend in, yeah. He rolled his eyes as he replied back. Believe me. Not my first choice when it comes to clothes. I got this at a bargain bin sale. Sue me for not being able to afford the good stuff. He spoke the last part out in slight annoyance. Say no more. We'll get you something more practical. Ooh. How about something like Spider Noir? With the trench coat and the combat boots, Lila suggested as she created a digital image for the whiskered teen to peruse as he looked it over. The trench coat greatly reminded him of Anko Midarashi back at Konoha. He could definitely work with that. Okay. Black trench coat and boots. But I don't want it to be all black, can we add in something dark blue? I'd like a belt as well. Something that could hold my kunai and other supplies. Uzumaki muttered as he made suggestions, and Lila hummed as she listened and processed this request, and then smiled broadly when she found something that would suit him. Got it? Something like this, perhaps? Lila queried, showing him a new digital image. It was the same trench coat, boots and a pair of combat gloves, but his chest and lower legs were now a dark blue color, great for blending into the shadows while still having a little bit of style. It was also resistant to wear and tear, insulation against electricity, fire retardant, lightweight, and had protection against both hot and cold environments. He nodded in approval at this, especially since some of those features would help potentially protect him against some of Sasuke's techniques the next time they met. How about a neck gaiter? Something I can easily pull up or down as needed. Oh, and a hood too. The Uzumaki spoke up, he was a ninja, and it would be wise to cover up or disguise his appearance. Especially since wasn't back home, though of course the disguise could be used in the shinobi nations and abroad. Neck gaiter that can also ask as a face mask. Check. Gonna need to make it so that it won't easily slip, make it dark blue as well, add in a web pattern. Same with the hood, and done. What do you think? The upbeat AI asked as she produced a finished product for the Jinchuriki to look over. A trench coat that was a nice mix of colors and styles that would help him blend in both as a civilian and a ninja. The neck gaiter and hood would be good for concealing his identity and could be easily removed whenever he wished. It's perfect. Simple, stylish, and practical. I think we're done here. The Jinchuriki stated, a feeling of excitement coursing through him as he knew the next step would be for him to begin learning how to use his abilities in order to become a better ninja and a superhero. All done. Your costume should be ready in a while. I'll be sure to add in all the bells and whistles just for you. The cheerful AI spoke with a wink before vanishing out of sight. I like her. Naruto said with a small chuckle, with Miguel giving a tiny little smirk since he couldn't think of anyone that didn't like Lila. The whiskered teen then cleared as he spoke. If you don't mind, I'd like to go home and tell Tsunade about what's going on. Also she and her apprentice Shizune are probably the only ones I trust enough to help me out with a problem I've been having. In relation to your near-death experience. The Spider-Man of 2099 asked, with the Jinchuriki slowly nodding and had an expression that asked how did you know? As if sensing the unspoken question, Miguel added, many of us have our traumas. Some of us we have worked past, others we are still dealing with. You'll be needing this. Jessica called out as she tossed a device to the Uzumaki, who neatly caught it in his hands. He inspected it and found it to be some sort of highly advanced watch. He looked at the spider biker questioningly as she explained, that is a device universally referred to as the gizmo. It has numerous functions, ranging from teleporting to alternate dimensions on command, interdimensional communication, and it'll keep you from glitching. It also has GPS tracking and can inform you of when and where canon events are taking place. It connects you to yours truly. The splendorous and fantastical Lila. Feel free to call me up if you need anything. The voice of Lila called out from the gizmo as a mini hologram of the AI appeared from the watch as she wiggled her fingers at the whiskered teen. I literally didn't understand half of what you just said, except that this thing is very important. Naruto spoke with a chuckle as he slipped the device onto his wrist after removing the red and blue band that previously prevented him from glitching. He flexed his hand and found that the gizmo was a perfect fit. I'll be back as soon as I can. Lila. Would you mind sending me into Tsunade's office? The whiskered teen requested, and within moments a portal appeared for him to jump through. With a big grin, the blonde teen charged and leapt on through with the portal closing directly behind him. Once he was gone, the AI piped in. I didn't want to say this in front of Naruto because I didn't want him to get too big of an ego or anything, but it would seem that our new recruit already had a healing factor even before the spider bite, which enhanced his regenerative abilities even further. At this news, the founding members of the Spider Society exchanged glances, not expecting to hear that. To what degree? Miguel asked, the AI responding with equal to, if not surpassing that of a certain mercenary and or the guy that's the best at what he does. A certain mercenary? The best at what he does? Who could, dear God? Was all the futuristic Spider-Man muttered. If what Lila said was true, then that meant the boy was, for all intents and purposes, unkillable by conventional and perhaps even unconventional methods. For the time being, it would be best not to tell the boy, lest he perhaps get overconfident or relies too much on his healing abilities. With everything said and done, Miguel decided to resume performing simulations to test the canon event loophole theory, while Jessica chose to leave and tune up her spider cycle. Both of them knew that there was no room for doubt. Naruto was definitely special. In Tsunade's office. Ugh. Finally, Tsunade muttered to herself as she finally finished the last of her paperwork and practically slammed her pen down onto the desk. Even after a year after being elected as the Goddamn Hokage, it felt like she had done nothing but paperwork. Had her old sensei left behind some kind of backlog that nobody was aware of? It sure felt like it. On a positive note, teaching Sakura Haruno, Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga was a nice distraction. While Sakura was technically her student, she had taken the time to teach the others about the medical arts to better support and help their respective teams. Haruno had come along quite well in her training in both medical ninjutsu and in the usage of chakra-enhanced strength. Now if only she could dispense with that obsession over Sasuke and get that fangirl nature totally stamped out, she could seriously and truly blossom as a kunoichi. She smirked to herself since she had finished her work and decided that she had earned a drink, plus Shizune wasn't around to stop her from drinking in the office. She bent down beneath the Hokage desk and lifted up a loose floorboard where she kept a stash of her favorite booze. As she reached inside to retrieve a bottle, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern for a certain blonde brat she knew. While Naruto had made a full physical recovery from his fight with his rogue teammate, she was worried about his psychological condition. Nobody could walk away from a brush of death without some form of trauma. Unfortunately, Jiraiya was awfully quick to take the boy on their training trip before she could give a full assessment. Even worse, she had not received a single update about the boy since they had left. One would think that damned pervert would at least have the courtesy of keeping her in the loop, seeing as how she was both the Hokage and that she worried for Naruto. Could have sworn I restocked my stash. She muttered as she felt around, trying to find a bottle until at last her fingers brushed against one. She grinned to herself and was about to pull it out when she heard a boom sound, which made her jump and hit her head on the underside of the desk, making her yelp in pain. She growled deeply in annoyance and quickly rose to her feet, ready to chew out and punch out whoever had surprised her, only to find the form of Naruto himself standing in her office. Hey there Tsunade. Been a while. He greeted with a large grin as she could only stare at him with wide eyes. What is Naruto? How did you get in here? Nobody told me you were coming. She said as she was still in shock. If the blonde boy had arrived at the gates, she would have been informed of his arrival. How in the world did he bypass the barrier surrounding the village? Oh. This handy gizmo thing teleported me here. He replied as he pointed at the strange watch on his wrist. Gizmo? Teleported? Just what in the hell is going on? She blinked her eyes a few times and then said in a dumbfounded tone, you completely lost me here. Why aren't you with Jiraiya? I thought you weren't coming back until your training was over. You still have about a year and a half to go. She added at the end as she rubbed her temples. A headache was already forming and she was certain that it wasn't from hitting her head on the bottom of her desk. You might want to sit down and have a drink for this, he said, with the slug Sanin silently agreeing as she fished out her booze from under her desk and took a long swig before plopping herself down into her chair. She then motioned for the Uzumaki to explain himself, wondering exactly what he had to say. This was going to be most informative. The whiskered teen told her of recent events, of his spider bite, his new abilities, the multiverse, canon events, the Spider Society and their duty to safeguard the multiverse. The whole time he spoke, Tsunade listened to him. To his surprise, she slowly nodded along, almost as if the whole thing made a weird sort of sense to her. Once he was finished, she took another long swig of her booze and then spoke. It all sounds like something out of a comic book or manga, but I've never known you to be a liar. Back in the day, when my granduncle, Nidame, created the original formula for the Hiraishin, he theorized that there were worlds beyond our own, entire dimensions. However, trying to break through the barriers of reality to explore these other worlds was too experimental, too dangerous. That there were too many unknowns and variables, and that it could cause a breach in said reality and lead to its collapse. To think, a means to visit these other worlds was actually perfected and not by ninjutsu or by seals, but by science. Gotta say, you're taking this a whole lot better than I thought you would. Naruto admitted as he crossed his arms, making the gambling Sanin chuckle a bit. One of the few real truths of the shinobi world is that there is no such thing as the term impossible. She replied bluntly as she took another gulp from her drink before asking, so, I'm curious about something. How have you been since the Valley of the End, and how has your training been going? About that, my hand keeps shaking every now and again. He responded, and almost as if on cue, his hand began to tremble, prompting him to grab his own wrist to steady his shaky hand. The Sanin narrowed her eyes a bit and quickly got up from her seat and approached, her hand glowing a soft green color as she began to look him over. She was afraid that something like this could have happened, and it seems that her instincts were right for once. No signs of any physical damage. I think the trembling is most likely psychological. I was afraid of this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it may be some lingering PTSD. She mused and gave her personal and professional diagnosis, earning a nod from the Jinchuriki, since he had already guessed that was the case. The Sanin then added with a small hint of venom to her voice, you should have come straight to me with this. I know. By the time I noticed it, me and the pervy sage had already left Konoha. I thought that I could keep it together till we got back. He muttered, prompting the slug Sanin to shake her head with another sigh. This kind of thing isn't something to be ignored. Trust me. I ignored my own trauma and avoided getting help, and you saw for yourself where I almost ended up. If you're able, I recommend that you come to see me at least once a week. I'll do my damn best to help you through this, just the same as you helped me. She promised him, making him smile a bit, glad that he had someone like her in his corner. I'm pretty sure something can be worked out. Pretty sure that I'll be needed at my best. He responded, which made the gambler give a satisfied nod as she released his hand and sat back down in her seat. Now about your training. What exactly has Jiraiya been teaching you? She asked out of curiosity, wondering if her old teammate had been doing a proper job. How to make a bigger Rasengan. Been also trying to figure out how to use the Kyuubi's chakra, but haven't had much luck on that front. I'll probably need the assistance of another Jinchuriki to help me work that part out. He replied in an even tone. A few moments passed as the slug summoner looked at him expectantly, almost as if she were waiting for him to continue. Wait, that's it, a whole year and that's all you've gotten? She asked incredulously, which made the blonde Uzumaki slowly nod his head with an embittered look on his face. The famed medic Nin clicked her and muttered venomously, damn you Jiraiya. Remind me, Jiraiya was supposed to have taught the Yondaime Hokage, right? What exactly did he teach Yondaime? Not including the toad summons. Naruto asked, since that question had been bugging him for a while, given the pervy Sanins apparently lacked teaching ability and style. Good question. I don't think that's ever been fully elaborated on. It should be noted that the Yondaime was an extremely prodigious shinobi, more than likely he taught himself most everything he needed to know. Honestly speaking, I highly doubt that old perv truly contributed to my predecessor's growth. He most certainly hasn't done anything to further your own growth. She practically growled out, all the while imagining herself ripping her old teammate's arms from his sockets and beating him to death with them. Probably better off without him then. I leave dealing with him to you then. Tell him where I am, let him worry, I don't care. He's not my problem anymore. The whiskered teen spoke as he then formed a hand sign and created a set of clones of himself and then sent them off to collect some things for him from his apartment to take with him back to the spider complex. I'll handle him. Also there is something else, Tsunade spoke and then paused as she pursed her and laced her fingers together as she glanced over to the nearby safe, her words causing the Uzumaki to raise an eyebrow and wonder what she was going to say. He received his answer as she continued to speak. I wish that I had something that I could teach you, but unfortunately I don't think that you have enough chakra control to utilize my chakra enhanced strength, and don't get me started about how the Kyuubi may affect you trying to use medical jutsu. However, there's still the forbidden scroll. Kyuubi Jinchuriki's eyes widened as he asked, you're seriously giving me the forbidden scroll? Last time I came into contact with it, I almost helped in its theft by accident. Legally speaking, I cannot give you the scroll since one of my duties as Hokage is obviously safeguarding it, but if you were to copy down any jutsu you feel that you want or need, I'd be willing to look the other way. She answered with a wink and a sly grin as she produced several blank pieces of paper and a pen for him to use. She then slid over to the safe and unlocked it and then said, oh dear, it seems I have left the safe open. Now anyone can take a look inside. Thank you. Were the only words that Naruto could express as he quickly grabbed the forbidden scroll and began pursuing its contents as he copied down various that caught his attention while trying to take down a good variety of techniques. He definitely wanted to learn some element-based ninjutsu to better round himself out. Once he was satisfied, he tucked the copied notes into his ninja tool pouch and placed the scroll itself back where it belonged. Tsunade smirked a bit as she drank more of her sake and then said, I hope things work out for you and this whole Spider-Man gig. I swear, if the next thing you tell me is that you punched in your V card, I will swear off gambling forever. She said the last part in a somewhat joking tone, her words making the whiskered teen tense up and blush a bit. Upon seeing his reaction, Sanon's face fell as she asked, you're shitting me? Right. Are you shitting me? Naruto could only shake his head negatively, silently stating that it was indeed true. Kami, you actually? Who is she? Please tell me that it wasn't something that Jiraiya hired. She questioned in a rather demanding tone. Nope. Not a daughter name is Gwen Stacy. We met and within like 2 seconds we were all over each other. He responded as he scratched his cheek with a lone finger. At this news, the slug Sanon reached into a drawer and pulled out a drinking glass and set it on the desk before roughly grabbing the whiskered teen by the shoulder and almost slamming him down into her chair. She then shoved the glass into his hands and began pouring a very large amount of sake into it as she spoke. I'm going to need details, boy. Copious and explicit details. She demanded in a manner that sounded as if she were interrogating him. It honestly kind of scared him a bit. Before he could open his, he was saved by the return of his clones that were carrying 2 duffel bags, one loaded with extra clothes and the other with some personal items of his. He then shoved the full glass back into Godim's hands and quickly yelped, nice talking with you, but I gotta go. Looking forward to our counseling sessions. He leapt to his feet and snatched up the duffel bags from his clones and then called out, Lila. Need an exit back to the spider complex. Oh no you don't. Get back here you little shit. I'm not finished with you. Tsunade called out after him, but it was too late as a portal appeared and the Jinchuriki leapt through as it closed off behind him, leaving a fuming Godim to tap her foot. Here I was looking for some juicy gossip. Damn. If only I were a few years younger, well best not to think too hard on it. She muttered the last part with a sigh. Now then, how to deal with that damned pervert Jiraiya. Meanwhile, Gwen's apartment. Gwen sighed to herself as she stood beneath the flowing cascade of water in her shower, her head lightly pressed against the wall as she just let the water wash over her. Her night with Naruto had left her all sweaty and gross, so it felt nice to wash herself off. During this time, she kept asking herself why she had ed him earlier and why she had let him into her apartment. No answer ever came to her, only that it felt right. That was all that she knew, was that it felt right. She looked back on when they cuddled together in bed and remembered how warm he felt against her. She remembered his toned body that reminded her of a swimmer's build. Their lovemaking was largely a blur, but there were still bits and pieces that she remembered. A part of her was worried that their pheromones might make them lose themselves again in mindless passion, but the other half of her mind almost wanted it to happen again. Perhaps the part that bothered her most was that she was questioning herself if whatever feelings they had were real or were a byproduct of their pheromones. She wasn't sure exactly, but perhaps hanging out with him and getting to know each other more would help answer that question and put her mind at ease. She turned off the water and slipped out of the shower. After using a towel to dry off, she slipped on a bathrobe and stepped out of her bathroom, running a hand through her hair as she gave a contented sigh. She then heard her apartment's doorbell ring, prompting her to approach it and open the door, revealing that her new roommate had returned. "Hey Gwen. Thanks for letting me in. I forgot that I didn't have a key. Oh, did I pull you out of the shower?" he asked at the end as he noticed her state of dress. At his question she shook her head. "Nah. I just finished up. I'll have a keycard made for you later so you can let yourself in and out whenever you want. How did things go and what do you have there?" she questioned and pointed at the pair of duffel bags he was carrying. He stepped into the apartment and set them down on the floor behind the couch as he replied, "Things went well, thanks for asking. I went to go see Tsunade, my village's current leader and one of, if not the most famous medic nin in my world. She agreed to conduct a therapy session for me once a week, to which Miguel granted me permission to go to. Apparently I scored big on the spider powers, I'll tell you more about that later. Finally, I picked up some extra clothes and stuff from my old apartment in these." He reached into one of the duffel bags and retrieved a set of movies that were marked as Princess Gale as he explained. "You remember that actress and daimyo that I mentioned and protected? These are her movies. Wanna watch them with me?" he asked at the end in a hopeful manner, especially since he had never watched a movie with anyone at home before. "A movie night, huh?" Gwen asked as she plopped herself down on the couch with a grin and then said, "Please tell me it isn't one of those stereotypical fairy tale princesses that dance, sing, and charms wild animals." "No. More like a warrior type of princess. I think you like them." He responded with a chuckle, with the spider drummer giving a small laugh and approving grin. "I'm up for a movie night. Been a while since I watched anything good," she said, which made Jinchuriki's grin widen further as he approached what he assumed to be the DVD player attached to the television and slid the disc of the first movie into the slot. He then made his way back over and sat down next to Gwen, who was currently holding the remote, and used it to skip past the trailers and cut straight to the movie. Once that was done, she cuddled up closer to her fellow blonde as he found himself looping an arm around her shoulders. Gwen felt so soft and warm against him. He could smell the scent of her shampoo, the scent of strawberries filling his nostrils, with hints of vanilla and cinnamon. As the opening credits rolled on the screen, he asked, "Is this a date? Does this count as a date?" "Yeah, it is, and I think it does," she replied as she rested her head against his shoulder. Honestly speaking, her work as Spider-Woman didn't leave much room for dating, and she had largely closed herself off after the loss of her old friend Peter. In a lot of ways, she was just as inexperienced with romance and relationships as her new roommate was, but she didn't mind exploring with him. She felt comfortable around him and felt a strange sense of connection that she hadn't felt before. Not with Peter and not with Miles. She wasn't sure how to describe it properly. "You start training tomorrow, right?" she asked him and received a quick nod of confirmation. She couldn't help but smile a bit and wonder just what kind of Spider-Man would Naruto become. Where would their relationship go from here? She found herself snuggling up closer to him and felt a certain warmth in her loins. Her face flushed a bit as she tried to focus on the movie instead, her hand subconsciously trailing down towards his thigh. The contact made the whiskered teen's face also flush a bit, but he made no effort to stop her or move away. They both exchanged looks and smiled warmly at each other, no further words needing to be said as they watched the movie play out. A mutual understanding seemed to pass between them that movie nights were gonna be a regular thing from now on, and if they were in the mood, well, who knows. They had already made love once. Why not indulge themselves every now and again? That was probably one of the best movies I have ever seen. That woman that plays Princess Gale, her acting was so on point. She was really committed to the role. Gwen muttered aloud as the credits of the first movie of the Princess Gale series began to roll. Naruto nodded in agreement since he was a huge fan of the series even before he protected the actress's life. She used to go by the name Yuki Fujikaze to protect her identity, she now goes by her real name of Koyuki Kazuhana. When we first met, she freaking pepper sprayed me, though after a while, we became friends. The whiskered teen explained since that was a pretty memorable mission. Ouch. Pepper spray. Not fun. You'll have to tell me the whole story sometime, she said with a big grin, earning a nod of agreement from the Uzumaki. You tell me about some of your adventures and I'll share mine, he promised her with a small wink. Deal. She replied as she got up off the couch and stretched out her limbs. I'm cooking tonight. How do you feel about pizza? I like pizza, he responded as the blonde drummer began pulling some dough and flour to begin preparation. Cool, anything in particular you want on it? I prefer to do it supreme style, but am open to almost any other mind. I love to add pepperoni, sausage, beef, onions, green peppers, and extra cheese to mine. She spoke with a grin, her stomach roaring in agreement, which made the two blondes laugh. Almost anything is fine except pineapple and anchovies, he replied, which caused the spider drummer to playfully swoon. A man after my own heart. Pineapple has no place on a pizza and anchovies are just downright nasty. What a way to ruin a good pizza. She muttered the last part in a rather bitter manner, having once tried pineapple on pizza. It was not a good experience. You make pizza by hand, huh? He asked out of curiosity, since it would be easier and less work to stick a store-bought pizza into the oven. Hell yeah. Store-bought is fine and all, but I prefer making it myself. Tastes way better that way. She replied as if it were the most simple thing in the world. Need any help with that? He asked as he stood up off the couch and walked into the kitchen to help her out, only to be shooed away by the blonde drummer. No, no, no. I got this. You cooked breakfast earlier, only fair I make dinner. We can take turns cooking. It's only fair, yeah. Oh, and don't even think of arguing or you're not getting any. She spoke with a saucy grin, which made the Uzumaki chuckle a bit. It would seem he had no room to maneuver on this one. If you insist. If you don't mind, I think I'll take a shower. He announced at the end, earning a nod from his new roommate as she promised to inform him when the pizza was ready. He grabbed a change of clothes from one of the duffel bags, along with some body wash and shampoo he had brought with him from his old apartment, and made his way into Gwen's bedroom. He briefly glanced at the bed as a mental image of their activities flashed in his mind. He quickly shook it off and entered the bathroom, stripping out of his orange jumpsuit with a sigh, noting that it seemed tighter than usual on him. It seemed like he was starting to grow out of it. He would need to collect more clothes soon. Fortunately, his new Spider-Man outfit would be ready soon. He slipped out of his boxers and then leaned into the shower, turning the faucets to start the water running. Once he got the water to a comfortable temperature, he slipped inside and almost in as the warm water cascaded down onto his body. This felt nice. He almost couldn't remember the good time he had taken a shower with both decent water pressure and hot water. His apartment's plumbing wasn't exactly in tip-top shape. As he poured some shampoo into his palm and then began to lather it into his hair, he wondered what Tsunade was up to and how she planned on dealing with the pervy sage. Meanwhile, Hokage office. Tsunade impatiently tapped her finger against her desk as she took a long sip of sake. She had requested her summons to get into contact with the Toads to help bring Jiraiya to her. The Toads were very quick to agree when she also mentioned in her request that their Sanin representative had been rather lax with Naruto's training at best and completely negligent at worst. They wanted answers as much as she did in regards to what the young Uzumaki had told her about his training. There was a puff of smoke on her desk as the form of one of the Toad Elders, more specifically, Fukasaku, sometimes referred to as Pa, appeared before her. Ah. Greetings, Tsunade-sama. My apologies if I kept you waiting. The Toad Elder spoke in a polite tone, with the slug user gently waving him off, knowing that he had arrived as fast as he could. Besides, she knew that she was gonna need some drinks for what came next, and probably a lot of aspirin for the resulting headache afterwards. That's okay. Would you kindly proceed and reverse summon Jiraiya here? I don't care what he's doing, I need to talk with him now. She asked with a twitching eyebrow, her irritation clearly directed towards her old teammate. The Toad Elder quickly agreed and performed the required hand sign, which resulted in a loud pop and puff of smoke as the form of the Toad Sanin himself appeared before him. So what do you say we wait, what? Jiraiya spoke, his tone changing from flirtatious to confused as he looked around a few moments to get his bearings. If the medic Nin had to guess, her perverse teammate had likely been in the middle of some form of attempted flirting with some beautiful but unfortunate young woman when he had been summoned to her office. She was certain that somewhere out there, said woman was undoubtedly breathing a deep sigh of relief. The Toad user finally registered exactly where he was and gave the blonde Senju an awkward smile as he spoke. Oh. Tsunade Heim. So wonderful to see you. And Pa. You're here too. I'm sorry, but what is this about? Something happened. He asked at the end, wondering why he had been so abruptly summoned. Was there some kind of emergency that he wasn't aware of? The Senju woman and Toad Elder exchanged looks with the former saying just wanted to check in on how things were going with Naruto. Her tone was sickly sweet and it made her fellow Sanin's skin crawl a bit as he immediately began to fidget nervously as he gave Fukasaku a questioning look, but the Toad Elder simply gave the perverted Sanin an apathetic expression. You couldn't have sent a letter or something? Jiraiya asked with a clearly puzzled face. She really went through the trouble of summoning him directly to her office just for an update. I thought it would be better if we spoke face to face. She answered as she laced her fingers together and leaned over her desk slightly, her eyes boring through her teammate and piercing through his very soul, making the Toad user squirm uncomfortably as she asked, how is Naruto doing? How is his training coming along? Jiraiya let out a bellowing laugh that sounded all too fake as he replied, oh, that he's doing fine, everything's fine. Training is coming along great. He's learning by leaps and bounds. You've nothing to worry about. The slug user obviously remained unconvinced, not just because she had earlier met with the boy herself, but when somebody told her something like there is nothing to worry about, then it automatically gave her cause for concern and worry. She also couldn't help but note that her old teammate was being quite vague to say the least. What have you been training him in, exactly? I'm gonna need more details. She questioned further as she let some killing intent slip through to start applying pressure to the perverted Sanin. Oh, you know. This and that. A major focus of mine is getting him to learn how to use the Kyuubi's chakra. Jiraiya replied, his words were still deliberately vague, but also contained a small nugget of truth. Unfortunately for him, his answer was unsatisfactory to the Goddamn Hokage. Really? What exactly qualifies you to teach him on how to control Biju chakra? Are you secretly a Jinchuriki? If not, then what can you possibly teach him in that regard? She questioned with a twitching eyebrow as she found her patience was starting to run out. Not that I'm taking sides here, Jiraiya-kun, but Tsunade Dono raises a good point. You could try bringing him to Mount Mayaboku to learn about Sage Mode. I am certain he could greatly benefit from it. The Toad Elder spoke, adding in his 2 cents as he gave his clan summoner a questioning look. Jiraiya swallowed nervously as he pulled at his collar, beads of sweat starting to form on his brow as he stammered, well. How is this your concern? He's my student. I decide how best to train him. The perverse Anon snapped out as he had been backed into a corner. It is my concern because I wish to ensure that Naruto is being properly trained. You and I both know that it'd be a kindness to put a noose around his neck than let an unprepared and undertrained genin out into the world. Especially given the close call he had with both Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki, who are both as infamous as they are powerful. So then, you haven't bothered to teach him Sage Mode. What about other ninjutsu besides the Rasengan? She questioned further as her hands balled into fists as she felt a strong urge to punch Jiraiya straight out of Earth's atmosphere. Huh? Other ninjutsu? How many do you expect me to teach him? You and I both know that learning too many jutsu is more trouble than it's worth. Jiraiya spit back as he crossed his arms, earning a scoff from his fellow Sanin. Do I expect you to teach him hundreds upon hundreds of ninjutsu? No. Certainly not. However, it wouldn't hurt for him to know at least a small handful of other techniques to better round him out. The last thing any shinobi wants to be is a one-trick pony. Utilizing and relying too much on the Kyuubi's chakra would be too much of a crutch. What happens if he were to encounter an enemy shinobi that has techniques capable of suppressing a Biju? Why do you think Itachi was sent after him? The Sharingan is known to have manipulated and controlled the Kyuubi in the past by Madara himself, and many have hailed Itachi as Madara's second coming. Need I say more? The slug Sanin spoke and finished her small rant, watching her teammate with a critical eye. The Toad user scoffed as he dismissively waved a hand and replied in an annoyed tone, I'm not gonna stand here and be grilled about my teaching style. Oi, pa, mind sending me back? I have more important things to take care of. Tsunade raised a hand and then said in a venomous tone, before you go, I have one more question. When was the last time you saw Naruto Uzumaki and where is he now? The perverted Sanin looked down towards Fukasaku, as if asking the Toad Elder to bail him out. Instead the aged Toad shook his head and spoke in response to Jiraiya's silent question, if you want me to send you back, you better give Lady Tsunade a satisfactory answer. I'm not getting any younger here. Otherwise, feel free to walk all the way back. Jiraiya crossed his arms and huffed, looking almost like a grumpy and pouting child as he finally answered, I saw him just the other day. I left him to train on his own. Left him to go hit on women, visit brothels and peep in on bathhouses, no doubt. So you weren't even properly supervising him then? Tsunade mused, not at all surprised by this, and not because she had spoken with Naruto earlier. I've heard enough. Jiraiya, I was gonna give you a chance to come clean, seeing as we are old friends and teammates, however it seems that I have no other choice. As of now, I am officially declaring that you are unfit to be Naruto's teacher. She started with a deep frown. What? Who else is gonna teach him then? You? Fat chance of that. I'm the sensei that he needs. The Toad Sanin spoke as he puffed out his chest. She muttered in a clearly unconvinced and sarcastic tone before she replied, I have already spoken to Naruto-kun personally. He told me everything I needed to know. Once those words had left her, her teammate blinked his eyes a few times, his brain seemingly ceasing to function and restart a few times as he tried to process this information. Wait, he has. When? How? Where is he? Who's teaching him if not me? He demanded, causing the female Senju to roll her eyes and inspect her fingernails. He has. Just a short while ago. Classified in secret. She bluntly responded to his questions as she slowly rose to her feet, her arms crossed beneath her massive bust, as she then asked him, why does this even matter so much to you anyway? Does it truly matter who teaches him so long as he learns how to defend himself against future threats? Before the self-proclaimed super pervert could speak, Fukasaku piped in as he spoke in an even tone. I think I know what this is all about. Some years ago, when Jiraiya was a young man, the Grand Toad Elder summoned him to Mount Myaboku and shared a prophecy. One pertaining to a child of prophecy that would either revolutionize or destroy the shinobi world as we know it. It seems that this knowledge has become something of an obsession for Jiraiya. Something suddenly clicked in the slug user's mind as she turned back to her former teammate and pointed an accusatory finger at him as she then spoke in an irritated tone. I get it now. You think that Naruto is this child of prophecy? Is that it? If so, why the hell are you holding him back then? Are you afraid he might destroy the shinobi nations as stated in the prophecy? Are you trying to control him and manipulate that damned prophecy? Why are you taking the word of some decrepit old and senile toad that can barely even remember where he is? Jiraiya turned red in the face, his cheeks reddening with anger as he spit back. Are you saying we should just let that brat continue on his merry way unchecked? I think we both know what that kid could do, what he could become if he were allowed to run wild. If he decides to destroy the shinobi nations, he could threaten our way of life, and there may not be anyone to stop him. Tsunade stared at her former teammate for a few long moments, her face a mix of anger and disappointment as she stated, I don't care about some half-assed prophecy. Don't you think that you might be taking it too literally? You're focusing too much on the worst-case scenarios that you aren't thinking about the good Naruto could do and has already done. The fact that you're trying to control and manipulate him is clear proof that you don't trust him at all. He needs to make his own choices, not be forced down a path that someone else has cherry-picked for him. You know, Sensei had high hopes for you. He thought that you perhaps had the most potential out of the three of us. That you could be better than me, and even better than Orochimaru, and you have thrown it all away over some damned prophecy. Pretty sure that sensei would be rolling in his grave if he saw you now. At her words, Jiraiya snapped and lunged forward, much to her surprise, as he grabbed her by her trademark Haori and shouted shut up. I won't be lectured by someone like you. You wasted years wandering around aimlessly. You're nothing but a drunk and a gambling addict. Now tell me where Naruto is. Now. Without hesitation, she grabbed him by the wrists and focused her chakra into her hands and gripped him tightly with enough force to make a series of crunching noises echo in her office, which was followed by the pained screams of the Toad Sannin after she shattered his wrists. She then headbutted him on the nose, the sounds of cartilage being crushed echoed as he stumbled back with blood beginning to gush out of his nose. Finally, she delivered an axe kick, hit him on the head, and sent him crashing down to the floor. Blood pooled beneath his face as he was now lying face first on the floor, with the blonde Sannin briefly checking for a pulse and finding one, showing that the Toad user still lived. Ugh. What a disgrace. It would seem that Jiraiya boy has lost his way. Such a waste. If it is your wish Lady Tsunade, I can make arrangements for Jiraiya to be struck from the Toad contract as punishment for his transgressions. The Toad Elder offered while shaking his head, since this was a dark day for the Toad clan. To think, their summoner was trying to manipulate that poor Naruto boy just to get a desired outcome from the prophecy. Tempting offer, but if you do that, Jiraiya's limited usefulness as a shinobi will be diminished further. Also I have a better idea. Tsunade replied as she fixed her Haori and then reached inside one of her sleeves, where she kept a storage seal that contained some emergency medical supplies. I think it is time that Jiraiya received an operation that should have been performed many years ago. One I should have probably carried out a long time ago. Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for Jiraiya, Hiruzen-sensei isn't here to protect him anymore. She spoke as she summoned a pair of latex gloves and began to pull them over her hands before retrieving a scalpel from her storage seal. The Toad Elder cringed, already having an idea of what she had planned, and decided to take his leave and spoke. I believe my business here will be concluded then. If you don't mind, please inform young Naruto that he has an open invitation to train on Mount Myaboku at his convenience. Please excuse me. But that said, Fukasaku vanished in a puff of smoke to return home, not wanting to see this next scene play out. Tsunade had a rather malicious smirk on her face as she knelt down and hooked a finger into the Toad Sannin's pants as she slowly lowered it down, her scalpel hovering over his groin as she spoke to her unconscious teammate. I think it's long past time that you finally paid the price for your transgressions. As compensation, I'll be taking the thing you cherish most, and I expect you to pay for the cleaning bill on the carpet. She then grinned wider, feeling an unexpected but not unwelcome rush as she began her operation. Naruto and Gwen's apartment. The Jinchuriki sighed as he stepped out of the bathroom with a fresh change of clothes, a large grin on his face, and his nostrils flared as he caught the scent of delicious pizza in the air. He stepped into the living room area and saw the spider drummer was already cutting the pizza apart at the table. She took notice of him and the expression on his face as she spoke. Perfect timing. I was just about to call you. You're sporting a pretty big grin there. He rubbed the back of his head as he replied, I guess I am. I dunno why, but I suddenly got a feeling that something good has just happened. His nostrils flared again as he caught the scent of garlic in the air and noticed that the crust had some kind of glaze on it. Buttery garlic most likely. I think you're gonna love this. The marinara sauce is my own special recipe. The perfect blend of spice and flavor. Took me a while to get the right amount of kick without making the spice too powerful. She proclaimed rather proudly as she used a flat spatula to deposit 2 slices each on their respective paper plates to start with and pushed the Jinchuriki's plate towards him. He picked up a slice and blew on it to cool it off a bit since he didn't want the melted cheese to burn the roof of his dot. He then took a bite and started chewing. Almost immediately a myriad of flavors exploded all over his as he tasted the various toppings and the zesty marinara sauce. The whiskered teen had to suppress the urge from bursting into tears out of pure joy and potentially ick bliss as he let out a delight. Looks like we got ourselves a winner. Gwen spoke with a rather haughty smirk as she crossed her arms beneath her bust after pushing a can of soda towards her roommate and opened her own. The Jinchuriki swallowed the food in his and picked up his soda, using the tab to pop it open, and then stated, "That has to be the best pizza I have ever tasted. Where in the hell did you learn to cook like that?" At his question, his fellow blonde gave him a little wink and sipped at her beverage. She then sighed contentedly and answered, "My neighbor, May Parker, taught me. My dad was often busy with work, so when he wasn't around, I kinda had to look after myself. When I was younger, May would babysit me, and as I got older, she began teaching me to cook so that I wouldn't have to rely on takeout or microwave dinners." Sounds like a nice lady. The whiskered teen said, mentally wishing that he had a neighbor like that and that someone could have taught him to cook in his earlier years. Suffice it to say, he largely had to learn through trial, error, and experimentation. They continued their meal in a comfortable silence, with Gwen carefully observing the Jinchuriki's reactions as he clearly enjoyed the meal she had prepared. A sense of pride and joy swelled in her as she knew that she was the one that had made him smile. For some reason it made her feel very happy. She noticed a small dollop of sauce that was on the corner of his as she said, "You got something on your face." She then brought a finger up to his face and swiped up the sauce. The young man froze in his seat and watched her, a faint blush rising to his cheeks, and felt a slight stirring in his loins as she brought the finger up to her and licked the sauce clean off her fingertip. She then blinked her eyes as if registering what she had done and blushed as well. She looked away and stammered shyly, "Sorry. Got carried away there." "Oh don't worry about it. I didn't dislike Kami, I am bad at this." He muttered the last part as he too felt a little shy. He wasn't used to flirting or affectionate gestures. All of this was practically new territory for him. "It's okay. This isn't my strong suit either. So when do you start training tomorrow? I forgot to ask." She spoke, trying to shift the subject away to something more normal. A part of her still processing what she had just done. "Ah. Right. Miguel-san wants me to meet him at his lab at 9 in the morning. Not sure what he's gonna be training me in, but I'm excited for it." The whiskered teen responded as he perked up a bit. Gwen giggled and nodded in understanding as they finished their meal. Once they were done, only 2 slices were left, which she sealed up in a plastic bag and deposited in the fridge for a snack later on, then disposed of the paper plates. "We had best get some sleep then. I have some training of my own to get to tomorrow." She started with the Uzumaki nodding in agreement. "Sounds good to me." He muttered before letting out a loud yawn. Now that he thought about it, they didn't get any sleep at all due to their pheromone-induced lovemaking which lasted the entire night. Sleep would be most welcome right about now. "Do you have any extra blankets and pillows I can borrow?" the blonde Jinchuriki asked, prompting his roommate to raise an eyebrow. "Why do you need to hold up? Were you planning on sleeping on the couch or something?" she questioned as she realized why he had asked. Was he seriously planning on sleeping there? Was he trying to be a gentleman or something? "Well, yes," he replied hesitantly before he continued. "I thought that you'd want to have your bed to yourself and all. This is your place," and he tried to explain, but his words fell silent as Gwen looked deep into his eyes and placed a finger against his, quietly shushing him. "It's okay. It is nice of you to offer, but you can sleep with me. I know this is new to both of us, but I don't mind. That aside, it's a bit late for the whole gentleman act, isn't it?" she asked in a slightly teasing tone as she pressed her forehead to his, looping her arms around his waist. His heart fluttered a bit, a warmth spreading in his face and chest as he returned the embrace. She wasn't wrong. They were well beyond the point of no return. In a way, they had already crossed a number of boundaries. Was this her way of showing that she trusted him? An attempt to deepen their connection? Did she not want to be alone? He wasn't certain, but if she gave her consent, then what was the harm? "Sorry, I just didn't want to make assumptions or get into your personal space," and he spoke, trying to explain himself, but was once again silenced by his fellow blonde who gently shushed him. The attempt at being a gentleman was nice, but in Gwen's opinion, the Uzumaki needed to learn how to take the initiative and be more proactive. Seemed like he was a bit on the dense side, but then again, in the name of fairness, this was a new situation for him and for her. She gave him a patient smile and cupped his cheek as she whispered, "It'll be alright. We won't do anything that we both don't agree to. Okay?" She then gently took him by the hand and guided him to her bedroom. She then slipped out of her bathrobe since she liked to sleep in the nude. The whiskered teen gulped a bit as he found himself drinking in her form. Her frame was slender, but still had some nice curves, her ass was firm and supple, and her breasts were nice and perky. What was she? A B cup? C cup? He wasn't sure. He shook his head, mentally chiding himself and tried not to stare too much. He didn't want her to think that he was a creep. His face blushing a dark red as he felt his loins stir. Gwen noticed the look she was receiving and blushed as well, having forgotten that she wasn't alone. God, he must think she was some kind of pervert since she had basically stripped in front of him. Sorry. I wasn't thinking. I'm used to sleeping in the nude. She spoke apologetically as she fetched some underwear, a tank top and some shorts to slip into. It was kind of funny, they had upon their first meeting and were now tripping over themselves to avoid any awkwardness or embarrassment. Still, she kind of liked it when he looked at her like that, appreciating her body. It gave her a sort of satisfaction. The Jinchuriki looked away to give her a little privacy to change in spite of already seeing her body after the impromptu strip show. He then saw a picture of her and that Miles Morales boy smiling together. It looked like they were sitting together on a bus or something. Seemed like a nice enough guy. He then cleared his and said, "Don't worry about it. I guess we'll just have to get used to this thing we have." He spoke at the end as he slowly sat himself down on the edge of the bed. His words earned a nod from the blonde drummer. The whiskered teen sighed and tried to relax himself, mentally telling himself that he shouldn't be constantly freaking out around Gwen. She obviously wasn't like Sakura who would pummeled him for the littlest things. Technically speaking, he and Gwen had already crossed a number of boundaries, and yet for some reason, he was getting nervous about sharing a bed with her. A part of him kind of wished that he had more experience with girls and relationships. He didn't have the slightest idea about what he was doing and felt like he was tripping around in the dark with no sense of direction. Suddenly, his hand began to tremble, making him grab his wrist to steady it as he muttered quietly to himself, "Not now. Not now. Why now?" In the background, Gwen had finished getting dressed into her chosen sleepwear and noticed that his hand was shaking again. Cursing her, she sat down next to him and placed a gentle hand on his back, rubbing his back in an attempt to comfort him. "It's doing it again, huh?" she asked, though her question was more of an observation than anything else, as the whiskered teen nodded his head, wishing that he could get his hand to stop trembling like this. She gently placed her hands on both sides of his head and began slowly pulling him down as he asked, "What are you doing?" "SHH. Just let it happen." She responded as she placed his head into her lap, letting him rest on her thighs as she began to softly stroke his scalp. It felt surprisingly soothing, relaxing even. Her fingertips massaged his skin, causing him to feel a sense of calm and relief as he slowly felt his melt into her embrace. He felt a sense of comfort, his eyes slowly watering as for perhaps the first time in his life someone was holding him. No one had ever held him like this before. Gwen then began to softly sing to him, "Rise up this morning, smiled with the rising sun. 3 little birds pitched by my doorstep. Singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true. Saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing cause every little thing is gonna be alright." 1. His trembling stopped and his hand steadied again as she soothed him and then planted on his temple. "Feeling better?" she asked him, to which he nodded in response. The feeling of being held and the gentle caresses and singing had eased his mind and relaxed him. "Better?" he muttered quietly, still enjoying the feeling of being held by her. "Thank you. No one has ever done that for me." He spoke as he slowly lifted himself from her lap and looked at his hand. If it wasn't obvious before, it was getting all the more clear that he had made the right choice of going to Tsunade. If this kept up, his shaking would worsen and who knows what other problems may appear. "Any time. I mean it," she whispered to him as the Jinchuriki turned towards her. Her face softly illuminated by the pale moonlight from outside their window. The light gave her skin a beautiful glow, her blue eyes sparkled like sapphires. She had a kind smile, full of compassion, soft and inviting. He felt his heart flutter as he was drawn to her and leaned in, planting his against her own. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders and held him close, returning his. A sense of peace filled them both as their parted and noses touched. It wasn't like the heated, frenzied ing they had engaged in earlier, when their minds were lost. This was sweet, full of warmth and tenderness. It was slow, loving, and passionate. They pulled back, a small strand of saliva briefly connecting them. They held each other close as the Uzumaki pulled the sheets over them. Gwen gently turned the whiskered blonde over and cuddled with him, her breasts pressed against his back as she took on the position of the big spoon, nuzzling her cheek into the back of his neck. "Good night," she whispered to him and placed on the back of his neck as she held him tight, almost refusing to let go. Even if he didn't say anything, she could somehow sense that he was carrying a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of anger inside of him, but there was also a deep sadness in him, likely from the years of isolation he had briefly described. It made her feel almost compelled to hold him tight, wrap him a big hug, and whisper that everything would be okay. "Good night, Gwen, and thank you," he whispered as he felt himself slowly drifting off to sleep. Feeling a sense of safety and comfort that was almost alien to him. He felt warmth in his chest and a sense of contentment. He could almost swear that he could feel their bond had deepened together, and he hoped to somehow repay Gwen for her kindness to him. His eyelids grew heavy and within a few minutes, the two blondes had fallen fast asleep together as they both basked in each other's company and enjoyed a peaceful and dreamless slumber. The next morning, Miguel had his hands clasped behind his back as he stood in the training area. Any minute now, his new student would arrive with the assistance of Lila, thanks to the gizmo that the boy now had on his arm. The futuristic Spider-Man was confident that the boy would quickly adapt and even flourish under his tutelage, especially given the boy's prior history as a ninja. It wouldn't take much for his spider training to translate into his experience as a shinobi. He was actually looking forward to seeing how the young Jinchuriki develops. Naruto was a wild card, but a wild card that was eager to prove himself. Furthermore, he and Gwen Stacy had formed a bond together in a very short amount of time. Miguel knew that the young Spider-Woman still longed to see and reconnect with her old friend Miles, despite the no-contact order that he had placed. Fortunately, there was the possibility that Naruto could deter her with their new relationship. A bit manipulative on his part, but it was for the greater good. After all, Miles Morales and his dimension was ground zero for the disruptions across the Spider-Verse, and to prevent further instabilities, it was for the best that contact with Earth 1610 be kept to a minimum if at all possible. His musings came to a close as he sensed his new student approach and turned to greet him. "Hello, Naruto. Any trouble finding your way here?" The Spider-Man of 2099 asked in a neutral tone. The whiskered teen shook his head as he replied, "Nah. Lila was very helpful and provided me with directions. This gizmo thing is really helpful. Oh, and thanks for the help, Lila." He spoke the last part towards the watch on his wrist, with the AI's hologram appearing and giving him a friendly smile, followed by a thumbs up. The futuristic Spider-Man then cleared his and spoke in a professional tone, "Your spider suit should be finished soon, tonight at the earliest and tomorrow morning at the latest. By now, your spider powers will have fully manifested. We will begin by starting you off with strength training, that will be very important." The Jinchuriki raised an eyebrow and tilted his head in confusion. In response, Miguel then began to explain, "In case it wasn't thoroughly explained to you upon arrival, spider people gain enhanced strength proportionate to that of a spider. On average, most spider people can lift an average of 10 tons, though there have been instances where they can surpass that in extreme situations. On another note, the spider person's strength can often vary depending upon their base strength prior to being bitten and by the type of spider that bites them. You will need to undergo special training to learn how to control your strength. If you grab a civilian to pull them out of harm's way, you could easily crush their bones or tear out a limb. If you punch an enemy that you intend to capture alive, you could accidentally kill them. Huh. I made breakfast for Gwen after we didn't mind. I didn't have much trouble cracking open some eggs," Naruto responded, earning a small sigh from his new teacher. In response, Miguel punched in a few commands on his own gizmo, which caused a pedestal to appear from the floor, carrying a solitary brick. "Punch this brick," Miguel ordered with an impassive expression, with the whiskered teen shrugging his shoulders as he clenched his fist and punched at the brick. Upon impact, the brick exploded into powder from the force of the Jinchuriki's blow, which made his eyes widen. "Now do you see? Your strength hadn't manifested at that point, now it has. It is important that you learn to control it and use only the amount of strength needed to get the job done." Naruto could only nod dumbly as he now saw firsthand the point his teacher was trying to make. The Jinchuriki had vastly underestimated his strength, the full scope and reality of his newly spider-enhanced body hadn't fully set in yet. He was definitely going to need to take Miguel's teachings to heart lest he accidentally hurt someone. "Then let's begin." Miguel spoke calmly as he began running his new student through a rather Spartan-like training regimen. The Spider Society founder made the whiskered teen perform all manner of tasks ranging from lifting and moving heavy objects and handling delicate objects without crushing them. The latter proved to be more difficult in many ways, as the Uzumaki accidentally crushed a number of eggs, even when trying to gently pick them up with his thumb and index fingers. It took a number of tries, but eventually he managed to get a basic handle of using the correct amount of strength for various tasks. Once Miguel was satisfied, he instructed the blonde on how to use his webbing and made him perform several attempts at a target practice range, which involved the Uzumaki fire, his webbing at holographic targets that depicted various villains. This was followed by Miguel making the whiskered teen manipulate his webbing in various ways, ranging from creating shields, snares and so forth. Naruto quickly took to wall crawling as he was no stranger to climbing, thanks to his old pranking sprees, and his tree climbing training from Wave also contributed to this course. His teacher then moved him on to web swinging through various obstacle courses, each one more difficult than the previous. Naruto's new teacher was a real taskmaster, but his instructions were precise, clear, and easy to understand. It helped that Miguel didn't simply explain something, but also helped with a clear first-hand demonstration, and then encouraged the boy to learn by doing it for himself. Hours passed as the Jinchuriki found himself sweating, his endurance being truly tested for the first time in a long time, as his teacher put him through his paces. Still, even when he messed up, Miguel would encourage him to try again and again, no matter how many times it took, until the young blonde got it right in the end. Finally, at long last, the Spider-Man of 2099 gave a satisfied look as he spoke to an almost exhausted Naruto. "Well done. You have shown a strong aptitude for my training. The rest of the day is yours, we will begin again tomorrow." The Spider Society founder then turned and left the training area, trying his best to hide a small smile on his face, as the Uzumaki gave a relieved sigh and fell on his rear end as he panted tiredly. "Damn, this training was way more intense than what the pervy sage put me through, but it feels way more rewarding." The whiskered teen spoke to himself, his ears perked up upon hearing a baby cooing, and looked upwards as he found the form of Peter B. Parker, who was carrying his daughter Mayday in the crook of his arm. The spider parent extended his free hand towards the boy, who accepted it as Peter lifted the Jinchuriki to his feet. "How long were you watching?" the whiskered teen asked as he wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling a sense of accomplishment after being pushed so hard by his new teacher. "A good while. Gotta say, what Miguel said. That's high praise coming from him. Could have sworn that he was actually smiling too on his way out. Still, I think he forgot the most basic and important lesson about being Spider-Man." Peter replied as he gently bounced his daughter in his hand, who let out a small giggle. "What's that?" "Pretty sure he covered a lot." The whiskered teen questioned since he had been seriously put through the meat grinder. What lesson could Miguel have missed? The veteran Spider-Man bent down slightly to meet the Uzumaki eye to eye and put his free hand on the boy's shoulder as he spoke to Naruto. "Listen to me carefully. Being Spider-Man isn't just about the powers or about punching out bad guys. It's about what's in here." Peter then placed a lone finger at the blonde's chest, making the genin realize that he was talking about his heart. "A long time ago, when I first got my powers, I tried to use them to make a quick buck in the wrestling ring. I could have used my powers to stop a robbery, but I didn't because I didn't think it was my problem. That same robber that I let go. He killed my Uncle Ben. My Uncle Ben paid the price for my mistake, and ever since then, I have resolved to use my powers to help people. As my uncle told me before he died, with great power comes great responsibility." That Peter explained as Naruto absorbed his words. Naruto looked back on the people of his world who wielded great power, both friends and enemies alike. People like Orochimaru used their power for their own greed and ambitions. Sasuke pursued power for his single-minded mission to kill Itachi. People like Haku used his power to support the person he cared for the most, and Naruto had used his own power to try and save others throughout his career as a shinobi. For a long time, he had wanted to become Hokage so that people would acknowledge and respect him. He had never once thought about the power that said position would bring or what he would do with it when he had it. "I think I get it. Power isn't something that cannot simply be enjoyed for the privileges and benefits. The individual who uses it must be responsible both for what they choose to do with it and for what they fail to do with it." Your Uncle Ben sounds like a wise man. It kind of reminds me of the Sandaime. I think that, in his own way, he also tried to impart some wisdom onto me, but I wouldn't listen. Maybe if I had listened, if I was wiser and stronger then I wouldn't be such a screw-up. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. Take it from me, things are probably gonna get from here on. Lem tell you something you probably already know, but I think you need to hear it anyway. The world isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It can be a mean, nasty, and ugly place. It doesn't matter how strong or tough you are, there will be a lot of people out there that will try to beat you down and bring you to your knees just because they can and will keep on beating you if you let them. The world is gonna try and hit you as hard as life itself, but it isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get it and keep moving forward. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. No matter what, no matter how many hits you take, just keep on going. If you mess up or someone drags you down, or somebody gets the best of you, just keep going. Don't ever forget the people who care about you, don't let the world bring you down and make you feel worthless or weak, and don't ever let anyone define you. You can become a truly great Spider-Man, I know you can. After Peter's impassioned speech, Naruto slowly nodded. He now understood that the most important lessons he ever received didn't involve ninjutsu or gaining strength, the most important lessons he had ever gotten had come from both his friends and even his enemies. Lessons about life, about perseverance, about loyalty, about cherishing and protecting loved ones, about how the bonds of others can make you stronger than you are. Thanks for that. If you don't mind, I'm gonna keep training. Naruto stated as he cracked his knuckles, with the father and daughter pair exchanging looks with each other. Miguel put you through the ringer and you're still gonna keep on going? The spider parent asked with his daughter reaching towards the Uzumaki, almost as if she somehow understood that he was pushing himself than needed to be. Don't worry about me. This is something I gotta do. For myself. Naruto started with a determined expression as he held up his palm and began concentrating, trying to create the Rasengan in his hand, without the help of his shadow clones. He had wasted a year now under the training of Jiraiya, he had also wasted a lot of time feeling sorry for himself and moping on his failure to get Sasuke back to Konoha. No matter what, he needed to create a Rasengan under his own power. He looked back on their duel at the Valley of the End, remembering how he had fought so hard to try and bring the Uchiha home, about how he spoke about the bond between them, and how he considered Sasuke a friend, only for the self-proclaimed Avenger to declare that he was severing their bond. He realized that there was likely never even a bond between them, that perhaps he felt that he owed Sasuke for helping save him from Haku's assault bag and wave. He was so desperate to cling to their bond that he failed to see that it didn't exist in the first place. There was no room for doubts. No room for hesitation. Sasuke was never truly his friend. In the end, in their previous clash, the Uchiha threw all his many gifts, advantages and privileges away in pursuit of greater power, uncaring of the consequences that came after. I made a promise to bring you back, Sasuke. Maybe it was a bad promise that I shouldn't have made, but I still made it. To break that promise would make me a liar, and I have no intention of becoming a liar and a cheat. Oh, I'll bring you back, Sasuke, alive or dead, whole or in pieces, it's up to you. I made the mistake of hesitating because I thought I could save you. I was wrong. Next time we meet, I'll give you one chance to come home as a former teammate. If you refuse, well, I won't be responsible for what comes after. Naruto silently promised as a bead of sweat formed on his eyebrow as the faint outline of a sphere appeared in his hands, while Peter and Mayday watched in wonder. Naruto slowly closed his eyes as he began to concentrate on the flow of chakra to his hand, trying to will a Rasengan into existence. To all my friends, who lifted me up and made me into something better. To the Sandaime Hokage, who tried to do his best to teach me about life as a shinobi. The Haku and Zabuza, for showing me the harsh reality of life as a shinobi and helping me find my own ninja way. To Gaara, for showing me what I could have become if I had taken a darker path and for testing my resolve. Thank you, he mentally spoke in gratitude, and at long last, a fully formed Rasengan formed in his hands. He then rushed forward and slammed the sphere of chakra into a brick wall in the training area, which made it explode on impact. Not fast enough, I need to be able to make a Rasengan way faster than that on command. The whiskered teen muttered as he focused chakra in his hand once more. As Peter and his daughter watched this, the spider parent couldn't help but smile as he whispered, "This kid is gonna be spectacular." Unknown to them, Miguel was observing this scene from his own gizmo, having listened in on and observed everything. The Spider-Man of 2099 found himself unable to keep from smiling as he saw his new student was still pushing himself to become stronger to pursue his own ideals and sense of justice. He really and truly was going to become something special. Later. Gwen hummed quietly to herself as she prepared dinner, wanting to offer a nice surprise in the form of fried chicken. She had let this chicken soak in some pickle juice brine and was now coating it in a nice layer of flour and her own secret recipe of spices. Of course, she had also prepared some crinkle-cut French fries for the side. Also, it was a good thing she had gotten a keycard made for her roommate before he left for training, so he could come and go as he liked. Speaking of which, he had been gone far longer than she expected. He should have been back a while ago. At long last, she heard her apartment door open and saw Jinchuriki enter inside. His clothes were dirty and he was drenched in sweat and grime too. "Whoa. What did Miguel do to you?" she asked out of concern. She knew that the Spider-Man of 2099 had very high expectations, but this seemed like far too much. Especially on Naruto's first day of training. A lot. I also did my own training on the side afterwards, though maybe I got a bit carried away. The genin explained with a small chuckle. She noticed that there was something a little different about him, though she couldn't place her finger on it. "I see." Was worried for a second. "Dinner should be ready soon. I'm making fried chicken with French fries," she announced with a wink as she placed the chicken and fries into a fryer, watching as the oil bubbled with the food inside. Naruto hummed in thought and then asked Gwen, would you like to go on a date with me? If you want, I can show you around my village. He offered at the end, his words making the spider drummer beam brightly. She had been rather curious about his village and she kind of wanted to see it for herself. I'd like that. She spoke as she accepted his invitation. The whiskered teen did a small fist pump as he whispered yes. The gesture made Gwen giggle a bit, which made the Jinchuriki realize that she heard his quiet victory celebration. He chuckled sheepishly while rubbing the back of his head. He had asked his teammate Sakura on countless occasions, only to be shot down, often violently by her in favor of her crush Sasuke, who ejected her at every turn, along with every other girl that practically threw themselves at him. Now, he had asked Gwen out on a date and she said yes right off the bat with zero hesitation. He approached the blonde drummer and held her on the cheek, which prompted her to loop her arms around his neck and return by planting her against his. For Naruto Uzumaki, his training at the Spider Society and his new budding relationship with Gwen Stacy, along with his newfound resolve, was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, as he silently promised to live by the creed of Spider-Man, a creed that he strongly resonated with. As Peter said, with great power comes great responsibility. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the SCARFACE101 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.